Hey everyone, welcome to GameFace, episode 247 on Sifted Games at Sifted.net. I'm Shane Satterfield, the founder of Sifted, and we're here to talk with you for the next couple hours about the hottest topics and games in the industry this week. Alongside me, I have Matt Kyle. What's going on, Matt?
Same as always.
We had a little bit of an emergency there. While the show open was rolling, something was going on there on your end. What was up?
It's just cat stuff.
Cat stuff. Hope you guys are doing good. Glad to be back doing this at our regular time at 1 p.m. Pacific, 4 p.m. Eastern here at twitch.tv/Sifted Games. Sifted is supported 100% by Patreon. If you like the show or anything else that we're doing, head on over to patreon.com/Sifted and kick us a couple bucks a month. Every little bit makes a big difference for us. If you want to find me on Twitter, you can find me at Dinfire. You can find Matt at mkyle. And if you can't afford to support us and you want to know when all the free stuff is going up on YouTube, you can follow Sifted at Sifted Games. Matt, it has been a really, really, really slow week in video games. Like I alluded to in the show open, maybe a couple hour episode today. Like folks in Europe, I don't think you guys are going to end up staying up too late this evening because there just isn't a whole lot going on. We do have a bunch of topics, but looking at them, I'm guessing most of them are probably going to get through in about 10 minutes. So it could be a little bit of a shorter episode than you're used to from GameFace. Matt, have you found anything really to play this week?
No, I haven't played much at all this week. It's surprised me. Like I was just like, oh, it's March. Usually March has some stuff in it.
Usually it's a great month. For the last few years, March has actually been like one of those months where you're like, wow, look at March. Like Capcom usually has something, and actually they do. Monster Hunter Rise is coming out. Capcom delivering again in March. But usually there's like 4 or 5 big games in March. A lot of times March is the month for games that they're trying to get in by the end of the fiscal year for financial purposes. But for whatever reason this year, like this week there was like Monster Energy Supercross and like some like monster truck racing game. Just not a whole lot of releases coming out right now. Although it's odd, last week our show was loaded with games, but we got over the hump, and now we're just gonna have to kind of work our way through the rest of March here. But
yeah, I mean, we had a backlog of all February last week.
That's actually true because we hadn't done a show because of my health issues that I've been going through. We hadn't done a show for a few weeks, but really we only brought back one game that we had missed. Even
I mean, it was Werewolf and Super Mario.
Yeah,
really.
Yeah. I guess Super Mario had been out for like a week when we talked about it at that point. But anyway, we're doing the best that we can. We're definitely going to keep bringing you guys a show every week. And again, we're back on our normal schedule on Twitch on Tuesdays at 1 p.m. Pacific, 4 p.m. Eastern. We're going to kick things off. Oh, actually, before we get going, you guys may have noticed that our Patreon received a little bit of an update. We've adjusted the tiers on our Patreon. Probably the big thing that I think most people will notice is that some of the tiers are gone. For instance, the Pactor Factor Party tiers are gone because we pretty much figured out at this point that even for 2021, there's not going to be an E3, like an in-person E3. So Pactor's Party isn't really worthy of a tier at this point. We're hoping in 2022 we'll be able to bring that back because it was popular. We did have people who participated in those tiers, but those are gone. And then kind of in line with some of the things I've been talking about since I've had these health issues and kind of paring things back a little bit, Ask Shane Anything is going to be different going forward. If you pledge at that $7 a month or more tier, we're going to start doing a live Zoom with all of you. Everyone who pledges at that tier or higher, the second Saturday of every month. And that will become sort of the reward for those who pledge at that $7 tier. In fact, it's coming up this Saturday. So make sure you're around Patreon or whatever. You should get an alert because what we'll do is we'll send out a message to people at that tier and higher with the info to call into our Zoom call. And we'll all get together. You guys can ask me whatever you want, literally whatever you want. The call's going to last at least an hour, maybe a little longer. We'll see how it goes. But anyway, that's how Ask Shane Anything is going to be done going forward. Instead of having separate episodes that need to be, asking for questions and then pre-producing it and then publishing it across all the different channels. You have to publish everything. It's just going to be a one-shot. And then that will go up for everybody to watch eventually, but it'll be on a little bit of a delay as a reward for those of you who pledge at that $7 a month or more. So anyway, I really enjoy that part of Sifted. I love Ask Shane Anything. I love being connected with you guys. And I tried to find a way to be able to do it so that we could all stay connected. And I think that's the best idea that I've come up with. So again, look for it on Saturday. It'll be like mid to late afternoon my time, so late afternoon on the East Coast. It'll be pretty late for people in Europe. I'll try not to do it too late on Saturday afternoon so you guys can all participate. But you know what? It's Saturday night. You're probably going to be sitting up drinking beers, playing games anyway. So it'll be fun. It'll be probably dozens of us all together talking about games or whatever else you guys want to talk about, movies, TV shows, and it'll be fun. So anyway, just want to give you guys a heads up. We have not changed some other stuff on our Patreon. I'm working on that still. One thing you guys may not realize, the way our Patreon works is when you guys pay at the beginning of the month, you've actually paid for the month of content you already got. So anyone who signs up for our Patreon, everything you get that month is free. You haven't paid for it yet. So when you guys just paid at the beginning of March, you're actually paying for all the content that you guys got in February. So with that in mind, it's not a big deal for us to change our Patreon mid-month because you haven't paid for what we've done on the Patreon yet. I hope that makes sense. At least I think it does anyway. Anyway, let's kick off the show. We're going to kick it off with what probably is the biggest story of the week. We've been hearing rumors about a new, upgraded, more powerful, better Switch for a long time now. But Bloomberg finally published something pretty definitive this week. And if you guys aren't aware, Bloomberg has kind of become the default, the de facto information for the industry. Ever since Jason Schreier went over there, and not every story comes from Jason, by the way, but ever since he went over there, it's not only him breaking big news at Bloomberg. There's a couple other guys that are over there working with him that are also breaking stories. And Bloomberg broke another story this week, and that is that people are calling it like the Switch Pro. People are calling it like, what's the other one? The Super Nintendo Switch? Which of those two do you like better, Matt?
Neither.
Neither?
I heard somebody say Super Switch, and they'll go Switch 64. And
well, the 64 is not going to work. I like Super Nintendo Switch. I think that has a nice ring to it. But my bet is on Switch Pro because they already did the Switch Lite. And so it seems like they're adding sort of the descriptors to the end of Switch instead of putting them in front.
I don't know. I think they'll cause. I don't think Nintendo likes the Pro idea.
How come?
Because I think it makes more of a pro amateur thing. Like Nintendo doesn't go for like classifications like that.
Well, the controller, obviously, the Pro controller.
Yeah, but I just don't. Maybe I just don't see. Also, because that's like what the PlayStation used.
Yeah, that's true. So that's a good point, actually.
I think they'll call it something else. Like they'll either call it something like absurdly cutesy, like the Switch Mega or something, or they'll
Switch
call
XL
it like,
or something maybe.
Yeah, or they'll call it like the Switch XL maybe because that's what they called the DS.
Yep.
Or they'll call it like I don't know, the Switch 4K or something.
That probably is the best idea because it's descriptive of what it's going to do.
So
yeah. And so anyway, on that note, here's some of the first details that Bloomberg has reported about the upgraded Switch. The screen itself first of all, we should mention it's going to continue to be a hybrid. It is going to continue to be a handheld console hybrid that will be docked. When you're playing in handheld mode, the screen on the Switch is getting a pretty big upgrade. It's going to get an OLED screen at 720p. The current screen, Matt, is 480p. Is that right?
I thought it was 720.
Is it already 720? So we're getting the same resolution, but just a better quality screen?
Better quality screen, and OLEDs will use less power.
Yeah, which can make a huge difference with the battery.
But it's just like people are just like, the biggest is it's 0.8 inches larger.
Yeah.
Than it's nothing. It's it's bigger. It counts, but like they want $300 for this.
That's pretty big. I mean,
I don't use the handheld mode, so I don't care. Like
I use it sparingly, very rarely, and usually
I'm just stunned at what a minimal upgrade this is. It seems to be, and like how people are just falling over themselves to give Nintendo money for it. It's striking to me. I'm going to need to see some real performance boosts in docked mode to be interested in this. And what they've said so far does not bode well to me.
Well, they said when it's docked, it'll be 4K.
Sure.
You don't think that's a big enough of an upgrade from 1080p? Because let's be honest, some of those games are barely getting by at 1080p.
Oh yeah, like how's it going to run? Like what's in it? Like that's what I want. Like we don't know anything about actual hardware upgrade in there, and what's that going to cost? Is it going to be just upscaled to 4K? Because like that's not the same thing.
No, I mean that would be a huge disappointment in my opinion.
Oh, agreed. But would it surprise you?
No, it wouldn't. You mean if it just used checkerboarding?
Yeah, if it's just like
using some kind of fake technology to get the 4K. So it basically tricks your TV into thinking it's 4K, but it's really not. That's what it really comes down to.
Yeah, I mean, well, and like if you're doing that, I mean, that's just an upscaler. Are they putting an upscaler thing? Are they upgrading it to the point that like maybe Bravely Default 2 won't chug in the overworld anymore? Like it's that kind of thing is what I'm talking about.
I saw a feature on VentureBeat, not Digital Foundry, shockingly. It was on VentureBeat, where they actually went through and looked at the options for this based upon the information that Bloomberg released. What actually can be done? And the first option, obviously, is for a new Tegra chip that can do 4K. But VentureBeat went through like a million reasons why that's probably not going to happen. Because it's really expensive. Because at that point, Nintendo would be asking NVIDIA to create and produce a custom chip. Because NVIDIA Tegra is a chip that NVIDIA had lying around, which is made it cheap and made it easy for them to fit it into the form factor of the Switch. And VentureBeat believes that is probably not going to happen. And then it went through a list of like 4 other things that Nintendo could do to have a 4K console in that kind of a form factor. And it honestly wasn't sold that any of them were all that feasible. The impression I got after reading that article was like, this thing may not happen, to be perfectly honest with you. It seemed like the cost and everything. I mean, they haven't said anything about cost yet. That's one kind of important thing we should mention. They said better battery life, but they didn't say anything about, is the cost going to stay the same? Are they going to drop the price of the old Switch when this happens? But VentureBeat really struggled to find a way that Nintendo could make this happen without the cost being outrageous. And as we know, that's always a big concern with Nintendo and hardware, is the cost. So I don't know. It seems a little far-fetched that they could get a 4K console into that form factor that isn't doing something like checkerboarding.
Especially because what we know about Nintendo is this stuff's going to be off-the-shelf parts. They're not going to custom build something for an interim system like this. Like for a new Switch, sure. This doesn't seem like the Switch 2. This seems like a stepping stone. So to me, maybe it's just going to be slightly overclocked. I don't know. Like I'm not expecting much of a big boost out of this. Certainly not to the point that I would be willing to spend the money it's going to cost.
And then what happens with like the Switch Lite? So if you upgrade this thing, the Switch Lite just stays the more underpowered version of the console, or do you upgrade the Lite as well? What do you think they'll do with that?
I mean, I would guess the Lite just remains what it is, and it becomes the kind of the economy model, and this one eventually replaces the existing Switch.
Okay. And then another thing that they talked about that was also a little dicey to me is that there will be exclusives, games that can only be played on the new, more powerful Switch, but Bloomberg also said that those will most likely be third-party games, meaning games that third-party publishers make that maybe they've wanted to get on Switch all this time, and they just weren't able to because the Switch wasn't powerful enough. Do you think that's a good idea, Matt?
I don't know if it's a good idea, but it's like about all that's left.
Because, as we've talked about before, you're splitting your user base at that point. And we know with the new Nintendo 3DS, there was all kinds of problems with that. Like
for the 3 games they made for it.
I think there actually ended up being like 12 or 13 games that were exclusive to run on that thing.
I think there were only like 4 anyone cared about, though.
Yeah. The rest, you're right.
It's just like, like how many Ubisoft shovelware games do you care that run slightly higher on the new 3DS? But like, I guess you got to do it sometime. I don't know if this is the upgrade to do it. Like, it seems to me that like an upgraded Switch at this point, your goal is to make the stuff that's already on the Switch run properly.
Yep.
Like you don't have the overhead to start doing games that only run on the new hardware. Like you need to make sure like your bog standard JRPG doesn't run drops to 15 frames a second when I go near a mountain. Like like you got bigger fish to fry than selling me like exclusive games for the new like one step up the staircase bit of hardware. Like that's a cart before the horse thing if I ever heard it. Like it seems like you should be more interested in running Breath of the Wild at a decent like resolution than worrying about like selling me like exclusive games I can only play on this new system. I cannot imagine the power boost that's going to be in this thing, if anything, is going to warrant that kind of a thing. Like, because the new 3DS really was a jump from the old 3DS.
Oh yeah,
and I do not see the jump on this being that big.
Really, from 1080p to 4K, even if it's checkerboarded. Because I'll say this, like
I don't
PS4
think that
Pro,
4K is. I don't think you're talking about a PS4 in a box at that point. If you're running at 4K, even like this has got to be some kind of upscaler. Like that. If the problem is like the little the dock just doesn't do that right now. The dock just does 1080p and that's it. If it's just a new dock that has a different upscaler that can do a checkerboard 4K, like you're technically not lying on the box, but you haven't really boosted the power of the Switch. You know what I mean?
Yeah. And then you can still get it to fit in that smaller form factor.
Yeah, and the screen's 720p just like the old one, so you don't need to have a power boost to reach that. You just have a better quality piece of hardware in the screen.
Yep.
That might just be all it is. Like it's a better quality screen on the handheld mode, and the dock has an upscaler that gets you to 4K instead of 1080p and calls it a day. That seems pretty in line with Nintendo's comfort level in terms of hardware upgrades to me.
Because, man, doesn't it really make more sense if...
And it would keep the price around the same area?
Yeah, I mean, to me, for a mid-gen upgrade, and let's be honest, like, it's still mid-gen for Switch. It's only been out for, 4 years at this point. It's not an old system.
It's like 4 years this week or something like that.
Yeah, it's like its anniversary is here. So it is a mid-gen upgrade for Nintendo. It seems like it would make more sense what you're talking about than to go full bore. Here's our full blast 4K console. Because honestly, once Nintendo gets to that, we may never see another Nintendo console. Once a Nintendo has a 4K console, what more does it need to do other than maybe create new controllers or interfaces and things like that? Does it make more sense to do something like you're talking about and then save like the full-on 4K monster for 3 years from now when they're ready to release the Switch 2, like the proper sequel to Switch?
I mean, I think that's what they're doing. Like, would I prefer to have, a more powerful Switch now? Sure, but I don't think that's what's going to happen. I think they're just doing this little minimal thing and calling it a day because, like you said, it doesn't make sense to launch their new system now. And if you're really going to throw new custom hardware in one of these things, that's what that would have to be. Like you'd have a much bigger bit of fanfare for that. That's a Switch 2 basically, and I don't see a Switch 2 this year because I think like you said, 4 years. Judging by how the system and the games are selling, you are maybe midpoint now. Like there's no reason not to milk this thing for another 4 years.
And if we know Nintendo.
And they will, and Nintendo will. But also it just makes business sense. Like you have no reason to replace this system right now. Yeah. Like it's in the prime of its life, basically.
Now it does hurt with third parties because there are lots of games that third parties would like to get on the Switch that with the system that you're proposing, it probably isn't going to help much.
No, I don't think it will.
Yeah. Getting that stuff to run at a decent frame rate still probably.
I mean, that's what I'd be after myself as a consumer, but that doesn't mean that's what Nintendo's going to do. Like, I am a high-end user in that regard. Most people don't care about that stuff.
Yeah.
I think it would be beneficial to Nintendo going forward in terms of third-party work. That if the hypothetical Switch 2 down the line catches up hardware-wise to the competition.
Yeah.
Like if you can find some kind of parity in terms of power with what Sony and Microsoft are doing, just for the sake of not having to come to third parties and be like, oh yeah, by the way, can you make a special version of your game that takes into account that our hardware sucks?
I mean, it's funny because there are features about like Apex Legends on Switch where they go and they talk to the developer about like, how did you do it? Like, it's like working magic. And it's like a cottage industry of feature articles about how did you get game X, Y, or Z to work on Switch. It's a miracle that you got it to work.
And that's a tradition of Nintendo hardware. Nintendo takes advantage of their hardware very well, but there's always been a tradition of like Factor 5 continually revolutionized how sound worked on the Nintendo 64 going forward, and to the point that they let them help design the sound system in the GameCube when the next generation rolled around. Angel Studios figured out how to run FMV off of a Nintendo 64 cart. There's always been that element of like these ambitious, talented third-party studios that are so frustrated with the limitations of Nintendo hardware, they basically they find a way to make it do what everyone else is doing, so they don't have to handicap their game. Rare.
Think about all the stuff that Rare used to do on Nintendo hardware. I don't know if you've been following like the whole Dinosaur Planet thing that's been going on the last few weeks. It's pretty amazing looking at Dinosaur Planet N64 what that game was going to be. Holy moly, that Rare got that to run on the N64. Like, I've been watching, like, the comparisons between the N64 game and the GameCube version that actually came out. And sure, the GameCube blows it away, but it hangs. Like, the N64 version can kind of hang in some of the scenes. You can
tell what it is, yeah.
It's pretty incredible what Rare was able to do.
It's a shame. It's interesting.
Those two should have never parted ways.
It still runs at 15. I don't know if that would have mattered. A lot of the people that made Rare what it was at that time were gone. By the time later.
But I don't think they would have left if they had kept that relationship going. In fact, I was digging around through like old content that I created. I found an old interview that I did with Perrin Kaplan. You remember her from Nintendo?
Yeah.
Like, she used to be like the spokesperson for NOA.
Yeah, she was the Reggie.
Yeah, and I did an interview with her on GameSpot that I found like this past week, just digging around, and I was like, holy crap. First of all, I had some balls. Like, the questions I was asking her, I was like, man, for someone who had just started in the industry like 12 months earlier, I was pretty ballsy. But I've grilled her over Rare, and it was literally like, I looked at the date, it was like 2 months before Rare left Nintendo. And I was like, so what's going on? Like, Rare's leaving, right? They're going to start making games for other platforms. She's like, oh, no. They're working on our Star Fox game. Totally denied everything. It's so funny looking at that stuff in hindsight. But anyway, that was a match made in heaven. I don't think that those two companies should have ever split up. Nintendo was totally stupid for doing that. But anyway, back to the Super Switch. I think I do tend to agree with you, Matt. I think it's going to be... I think people might ultimately end up being a little disappointed with what Nintendo does with this Switch revision.
I
don't know. I haven't seen like all the hype.
Are you just getting here? Because it's kind of like
I don't leave sifted, honestly. Like, I don't go on Twitter looking for game stuff. So.
Oh no, I just mean in terms of how Nintendo runs its quote unquote upgrade business.
Yeah.
Like,
you were talking earlier about how people are like
never put anything out that makes you go like, oh wow, that's amazing. That's exactly what we wanted. Like, no one does. Yeah, it's always what Nintendo's like, oh, here's a little thing. Here's a little better thing to buy. If you haven't bought it yet, it's cool for you, kind of thing.
You were talking earlier about how the Nintendo fans are losing their minds. And I don't see that because I'm always on Sifted and we're all older there and we don't really do that kind of stuff. Like, everyone's kind of level-headed and everyone's been following the industry long enough.
I see it on Twitter and like
they don't go those places anymore.
And Reset Era,
that's probably where you're seeing.
It's everything. It always reminds me of...
Reset Era should probably be called like Nintendo Era. Let's be honest.
It is pretty much. One of the fastest ways to get banned there seems to be to
badmouth Nintendo.
Raise any skepticism about Nintendo not being the greatest company on earth.
Yep.
Or to say an unkind word about Iwata.
I mean, it's been that Gaming Age was kind of that way too, to be honest with you. Before everybody left there and went to Reset Era. So
it's just sort of, there's a subset of the hardcore gaming world that is obsessed with Nintendo, and there's no way around it.
Yep.
And that's just sort of how it is, and you deal with it. But like, it always reminds me of that old Penny Arcade strip where like Will Wright's given a speech and he's just like, my new game is just called Pee. I'm going to pee on the audience and we're going to see what happens. And some pee might get in your hair. It might get in your mouth. And I think that's interesting and exciting for storytelling opportunities. And the whole audience is just screaming, yes, pee on us, Will Wright. And that's sort of what Nintendo fandom is to me.
It's not just Nintendo though. I mean, there are PlayStation fans like that.
There's Sony people. I feel the same way about the Sony people that are like incredibly weird about like Sony games going to PC.
Oh yeah.
It's like you'd
we'll
say
talk
God of
about
War
that
might,
later on in the show.
you say God of War might go to PC, and you get people that like think that you're talking about war crimes or something. It's just it's bizarre.
Let's fire up the tribunal.
Yeah.
I hear you. All right, let's move on. We're going to talk next about a game that was announced this week, and a pretty exciting game, depending on your perspective. And that game is called Aliens Fireteam. Matt, anything Aliens related, as soon as I see it or I hear about it, the first person I think of is you. Because you have very strong opinions about the Aliens IP. This is the first.
That's true.
This is the first Aliens game since Isolation, which I had completely forgotten was launched in 2014.
Yeah.
It's been almost 7 years since we've had an Aliens video game. This
Now,
game,
to be fair, that Isolation was great. So
yes, it was shockingly good.
I was kind of hoping there might be another one, but
Yeah, I think
guess they
people are a
decided
little
not to.
disappointed, honestly. At least it seems like most of the chatter I've seen about this game, and I haven't seen a lot, but it seems like most of the chatter I've seen, people are disappointed that it isn't an Isolation 2 or a spiritual successor to that game.
Yeah, I mean, there's nothing that precludes that from happening. It's just I feel like Creative Assembly like just nailed it, and like there doesn't necessarily seem to be a way to follow that up. Really,
Yeah.
It's also notable that like I mean, Alien Isolation is called Alien Isolation.
Yep.
This is Aliens Fireteam. Like the Alien and Aliens are two different things. Alien is a horror movie. Aliens is an action movie.
That's true.
With horror elements, but it's still an act. I mean, Aliens. It's funny to see like younger people watch Aliens for the first time because they basically come away being like, that was fine, but like it's just cliche after cliche after cliche. And I'm like, yeah, because all those cliches came from aliens.
They started the
how
cliche.
How influential that movie was.
That is hilarious. They don't realize how old those movies are, that those weren't cliches back when those movies were made. That they
like
made
Aliens,
the cliche.
Aliens basically codified how sci-fi action works.
Yeah.
And that was the genius of Cameron, was like he made a completely different film from the original horror. I mean, the original Alien is basically a slasher movie in space.
Yep.
And then he's like, oh, the funny thing is like that basically what Aliens was Cameron had pitched a Rambo sequel, basically what Rambo 2 would have been, and they turned it down. So he pretty much took his script idea for Rambo 2 and turned it into Aliens.
Huh.
It's a traumatized veteran going back to where they were traumatized with a platoon of Marines to face their fears and win this time.
That's funny. That's hilarious. So this is actually like a Left 4 Dead clone set in the Aliens universe. It appears,
which I think makes a lot of sense.
It does or doesn't to you?
It does. Like for Alien, if you're going to think of Aliens, you think of two things. You think of Get Away From Her, You Bitch, with the alien queen, and you think of the Marines, the Space Marines, and like this having the Space Marine. And look, like Gearbox tried it. And
do you think that stench might float over top of this game? People remembering that game?
I don't think so, because Colonial Marines was a single player, like kind of campaign driven thing, and this seems like more like a straight Left 4 Dead clone. And I would hope that they know making this that like you're going to need to be real upfront about everything. Like you're going to need to take into account what Gearbox did to this IP and win some of that, even though it's not their fault.
Yep.
The people making this did not do that. But you're going to have to like show that, the AI works, that the game is finished, that you weren't like doing weird funding crap with Sega. It's like
they're just not lying about the game in general. I mean, that was really Gearbox's problem is that it promised things that it didn't deliver.
Mm-hmm. I mean, I will always love that one clip where the alien just walks right past the guy.
Yeah.
It's just like, and I will always also love that they figured, was it last year, year before, where somebody figured out that like if you just change like one character in the INI file, it fixes the AI.
Yeah.
Like it was one thing.
And they couldn't figure it out. Gearbox couldn't figure it out. It is pretty sad. But this is a Left 4 Dead
I think this is a
clone.
really good idea for a game.
Yeah.
I have no issue whatsoever with this being, because look, isolation, like, would I like more isolation? Sort of, but also isolation was too long, and
it did drag
really
on a bit.
long. It's like 20 hours.
Yeah.
That's a lot of sneaking.
It is.
And also, like, I can't think of a whole lot that you could do better in an isolation sequel. But again, this is Aliens, and it doesn't mean you can't do Isolation 2.
Yeah.
There's such different treatments of the same IP that if Creative Assembly I feel like that would have happened by now. It's been 7 years.
Yeah, I think Creative Assembly has moved on. Maybe the struggle is finding a studio that you trust to be able to do that's kind of that type of game justice.
Right, because the tech behind Isolation is fascinating, and I don't know if you would. It's funny because like everyone's like, oh, Creative Assembly, like they make grand strategy games. They make like what? And the funny thing is, when you look at how Isolation works, it's like it kind of took strategy gurus to make that system happen.
Absolutely.
Like it was like there's two AIs in that thing that are one is the alien being the alien, and the other is sort of an omniscient AI that always knows where everything is, but doesn't tell the AI alien everything. But tells it just enough to make everything creepy. Yeah. Like it tells it everything enough just to keep everything tense.
Yeah, that's true.
And it's like it's like a bunch of YouTube videos about how the AI system in Isolation works. And if you haven't watched it, you should, because it's fascinating.
Yep.
That will probably not be in play in Fireteam, I would imagine.
So this game does seem to be like an elevator to elevator sort of experience. You fight from one elevator to the next, or one airlock to the next, as it were. It appears to be just 3 players instead of 4, which I was a little bit surprised at for a game that's coming in 2021. And that's the other part, too. The game is coming soon. It's coming here in the next couple months to everything, literally everything but Switch. It's coming for last gen plus next gen consoles and PC, just not Switch. And I don't think Stadia either, if I remember correctly. So it's coming pretty soon. And we're checking out B-roll right now, courtesy of IGN. They have like 25 minutes of gameplay, and we're showing some of that right now. One thing that I do like is I like that there are a lot of like gadgets and things like that you can use. I'm a sucker for turrets, and using turrets in games like this, strategically placing them in certain points where you can get the most bang for the buck. There's lots of different turret types that you can use in this game, and the action is intense. There's very little downtime. When they first started showing the gameplay on IGN, like they're just kind of walking around explaining how the game works. But once it starts to kick in, it's just nonstop action. So it's not like this wave sort of style where you take on this big wave of enemies and then you get like a moment to like to kind of get a breath and set up your stuff and then, heal everybody else on your squad. It's just like, it appears to be just nonstop carnage. And the AI of the enemy seems to be pretty smart. The way that they traverse the level seems to be pretty intelligent, which to me also is a big deal in games like this. They do seem to be pretty accurate with their acid bombs. Like, there's a couple shots in this footage where one of the necromorphs throws an acid bomb from like 200 yards away and like drops it right on your noggin. That stuff gets a little annoying, I think. But otherwise, it looks like it's just action-packed from the minute you get off the elevator until you make it to the next one. I didn't get to see any boss fights in the footage that they've shown so far, but there is a wide variety of creatures. There's 20...
You got to assume there's a queen in there somewhere.
Yeah, I'm sure. There's 20 different types of enemies in what will come at launch. This is also set after the movie trilogy, 23 years after the trilogy ends. So I don't think you're going to see a lot of characters that maybe from the films. A lot of them are dead anyway, but...
They're all dead.
I guess they are all dead. Yeah.
Unless you're a big fan of a couple of the prisoners from Alien 3, like you're pretty much stuck. Yeah,
that's true. So you're going to get all new characters in this, but you're going to get a lot of enemies that you're familiar with. There's 5 different classes. There's a gunner, a demolisher, a technician, a doctor, and a recon class. There are 4 story campaigns, and there's 3 missions inside each campaign. So basically 12 missions that you can play through in the base game. There's weapon customization. It's not really a game as a service, though, Matt. There's no DLC, there's no loot boxes, there's no microtransactions, but there will be DLC. So they're kind of following the recent trend of, we're not going to be scummy, but we're going to keep supporting this game long after it launches, which I think that's what everybody wants right now.
Yeah, I think the microtransaction game as a service thing is on the way out. for sure. Like there's just too many high profile failures in that space right now.
Yep. And if you choose to play by yourself, your two teammates can be taken over by AI. So you're not like ass out if you can't find people to play with.
I mean, that also was true of Left 4 Dead, and that was basically impossible.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah, you're right. But it's been a long time since Left 4 Dead, so I'm hoping that maybe some advances could help a little bit. But games like this, you want to play with your friends. I mean, that's when they really hit their stride, and that's when you really kind of see the real value from them. So I'm pretty excited for this, Matt, to be honest with you. I was surprised by World War Z. I had a lot of fun with that, even though that game looked, nowhere near as good as this.
Well, I'm certainly more interested in this than another zombie game.
Yep.
The IP helps a lot in this case.
Yep. And World War Z was smart in that it didn't choose to use the slow, shambling zombies. It used, the World War Z zombies, the ones that run really fast.
Well,
and
the movie World War Z zombies.
Right. Yeah. I've never read the books, so I don't
The book is good, but it is not. It is basically unrelated to the film.
Oh, okay. The film, though, where you just have these massive hordes that literally climb on top of each other and run really fast. That's what you got in World War Z, and I think that's why it worked. And I think a lot of people are actually checking that game out now on Game Pass, World War Z. And if you do have Game Pass, I do recommend checking it out. It's a good primer for this game. But it is coming to everything. It's coming soon, here in just the next month or two. I'm surprised they waited so long to unveil this. But that does kind of seem to be the trend lately, is show a game, show it when it's almost done so people can't whine and bitch about it, and then release it a couple months later. And I really don't have any issues with that, but with a license this big, an IP this big, I do wonder if they would have had a better chance of reaching some of the more mainstream audiences if they gave it a little bit more runway. Than they
maybe. I think for these multiplayer focused games, it's better to hit fast, because people's attention span on these things can move so quick that it's probably better to be like, hey, there's a thing coming. Oh no, it's already here. Okay, go play. It's I think that's part of the strategy with games like this is you got to catch the attention right away. No one's going to sit around for 6 months waiting and anticipating an Aliens Left 4 Dead clone. But you might jump in and be you see it for the first time, and then 3 weeks later there's a beta. I think that's part of the theory.
Yeah, Matt, I don't know if you've seen or not either since last week's episode, but I was not alone in liking Outriders. Apparently, everybody really likes it. Mm-hmm. The response to the demo, beta, whatever you want to call it, has been really positive. So you have that
even
coming out.
Even Marcus liked it.
What'd you say?
Even Marcus liked it.
Oh, he did? I didn't even see that.
I think so. I think
he actually liked something?
Yeah, exactly. I think I read.
That's when you know something must be pretty good if Marcus actually liked it. So you have that coming soon, and then you have this. So, I mean, they're different, but not that much different in all honesty. So it'll be interesting to see as this genre becomes more and more crowded, which games end up bubbling up to the top, which ones succeed, which ones don't. And I think a lot of it's going to have to do with, how do they handle that period after launch, the 6 week, the 8 week period. As we've seen with a lot of games that do okay out of the gate, if they can't support it at 8 weeks and they haven't got a good plan for it, and we're going to talk about a game in a little bit that's kind of like that, if they don't have that, then they can find themselves in a lot of trouble. So we'll see how they support this. I like that, there's no loot boxes, there's no microtransactions, but there is DLC. I like the weapon customization. I think that always adds a nice little layer to stuff that maybe some other games can't do that are maybe superhero styled or something like that. But there is going to be a lot of competition for this game, and it'll be interesting to see which ones kind of end up coming out on top. But anyway, that's Aliens Fireteam. Again, coming to everything but Switch and coming in a couple months. Right now, there's not much coverage of it. If you go to the game page on Sifted, there's just a trailer that we showed you and then the chunk of gameplay from IGN. But I have a feeling here in the next couple of weeks, we're going to start getting a lot of coverage for that game because they need to. There's a lot of stuff that they need to talk about. There's a lot of content that they can still talk about to get people hyped for it. And it is Aliens. And I think people do resonate with that IP still, even though it's been a long time since we got a game, which is crazy, Matt. Aliens is made for video games. There should be more of them. I'm not saying keep putting out crap. There should be more good Aliens games than what we've got.
Yeah, it's also kind of, there have been a good number of good Aliens games, but
they're spread out.
The IP's been in a bit of a funk for 2 movies now.
Yep.
So it's, I don't know. It's probably about time to resurrect that stuff and bring it in. Maybe resurrect is a bad word in the Aliens world. I mean, I like it better than 3, which is complete shit. But Prometheus is terrible. Alien Covenant is worse. The Aliens vs. Predator movies are unwatchable. Like it's been a very long. Yeah, I was 10 the last time a good Alien movie came out. So the games are at least doing better than that.
I'd agree wholeheartedly. We're gonna go from one game based on a film to another game that's based on a film series. We're gonna talk about Hogwarts Legacy. Did we actually talk last week about what's been going on with this game?
No.
Okay, so to fill you in, and I'm sure you guys watch other podcasts, but in case you do only watch or listen to GameFace, what's been going on with this game is, well, first of all, we have talked about J.K. Rowling and how she is kind of transphobic and fans. I honestly don't know a whole lot about her comments or anything like that in that arena, but Cribno's version is she's been abrasive towards transgenders. She's transphobic, according to some people. And some people are unhappy that she is going to make some profit off of this game. And Warner Brothers has tried to smooth that over and been like, she has no input on the content in the game. But yes, we will admit she is going to make some money off of it. There's nothing we can do because it's her IP. And then they announced that you will actually be able to play as trans characters inside the game, which I think showed maybe that was Warner Brothers saying, look, see, like she's not controlling the content in this game.
Yeah, I think that's definitely them trying to say like the people making this do not share her opinions on the subject.
Yep.
Which is fair because it's like, the Rowling thing is a conundrum, and in a way, not so much to me because I'm not, we're a little old to have had a lot of emotional investment in Harry Potter, but I know a lot of people in their 20s who grew up with it. Mm-hmm. And they're kind of big, their big thing is like what if, like people don't have a big problem like continuing to support like a bigger franchise, like a movie thing, even if there's like maybe someone higher, like maybe you think you agree with Ray Fisher, the guy who played Cyborg in Justice League, and that that Whedon was terrible and that kind of thing, or like but with other stuff that came out about Whedon, but a lot of people I know who like Buffy are like, well, I'm still going to support and enjoy Buffy the Vampire Slayer because there's a lot more people involved in making that than just Joss Whedon, right? With Harry Potter, it all goes back to her.
It does.
Like one person wrote those books, one person owns that IP, one person like benefits from it the most. Like she's at the top of that pyramid. So it's kind of a unique situation because it's funny, you don't really get that anymore.
No.
You don't get a George Lucas anymore who sits at the top of that corporate pyramid and rules that IP anymore. It's usually more of
maybe George R.R. Martin. Would he be one?
Yeah, George R.R. Martin would probably be one. I feel like.
But you're right. They're very rare.
It's very uncommon. And so Rowling kind of being at the top of that pyramid and undislodgeable, like, guys, I know a couple of people that's like, well, they should just try to get it away from her. And I'm like, there's just no way you can do that.
You can't do that. She created it. I mean, it wouldn't be right, to be honest with you. Like, it is her creation. And sadly, you have to take the good with the bad. I hate to say it. Like, these people were okay with her whenever she was making stuff that they didn't object to. Now they object to some of the stuff that she's been saying or maybe may or may not incorporate into the IP going forward. Like, unfortunately, it's just something that people are going to have to deal with.
Yeah, I mean, I don't think she's going to incorporate anti-trans rhetoric into future Harry Potter stuff.
Yeah, I don't either. But that would be a huge mistake.
That would, even she knows, for all her babbling on Twitter about turfy stuff, like she knows not to do that.
Yeah, and she's allowing this in the game, so.
Yeah, I mean, I'm curious, like, what the rules are. I mean, she's traditionally had pretty strong veto power over things that Warner Brothers does. So it's interesting. And I mean, part of me wants to know is like, did she know this was in the game? Did they announce this and kind of dare her to tell them to take it out kind of thing?
Right.
It's interesting. It's the political struggles that might be happening internally on this, because Warner Brothers, doesn't want that controversy surrounding this IP.
They just want people to enjoy their freaking Harry Potter game.
Yeah, they just want your money. They don't want you to think about where it's going. Yeah,
and they don't want controversy around a game that a lot of kids are going to play. Let's be honest. Mm-hmm. I mean, this is a game that's targeted towards young kids and tweens and then older kids like us, in all honesty, who grew up with Harry Potter. And I agree, this isn't the type of IP that you want controversy like this around. And then the real reason we're talking about this is because...
Yeah, at least Walt Disney had the sense to keep all his horrible opinions to himself.
Exactly, and he did have a lot, and that is fair. I mean, Walt Disney was not the man that a lot of people kind of look at him to be.
No, and he would be the first person to admit that. Like, he said stuff like, he's like, I am not Walt Disney. Like, Walt Disney is a character that I play on those show that I present to the public. That's not, they wouldn't even show him smoking in the Mary Poppins movie they just made about, saving Mr. Banks. You heard him cough once and that was it. But in reality, Walt Disney smoked like a chimney. Like it was, but they will never show you that.
Yep. And they shouldn't, because I don't want kids seeing somebody
it's an image. Like, it is fair to say, not everybody's Mr. Rogers. I mean, Mr. Rogers is pretty accurate to his real life.
He is the exception.
Behavior.
He actually was that
they
nice.
Can't, that's a 1 in a billion thing. Like, it's okay to play this persona public facing, but then social media has sort of, in a pre-Twitter world, we wouldn't have probably never known that J.K. Rowling thought these shitty things.
And I also think it's okay to keep that reality away from young kids. Like, if they're enjoying the media that these people are creating, there's no reason to spoil that by saying this guy isn't who you think he is. Like, let them have their fantasy until they're like 12.
if I had younger kids who enjoyed Harry Potter, I certainly wouldn't take it away from them because she'd said something horrible. I would probably try to limit my amount of money I spent on it.
Yeah.
But at the same time, even going to Universal Studios to the Harry Potter place there, it's like does she get a cut of the money when you buy a butterbeer? Maybe.
I think she probably does.
Probably, but there's also I think the license for that is paid yearly. Like, they just lump sum every year.
But still, she's making a little money on it.
There's a lot of people between her and there. It's like,
of course.
It's like you got the people working at the park, you got the people that work at there's a huge machination there, and everybody kind of has to make their own decision on that sort of thing.
Yep.
Whether to buy I watch a trans YouTuber who talks about this stuff all the time, and she's talked about this very issue a couple of times, and she's like, I really want to play this game, and I'm trying to come up with ways to justify to myself how to play it. Like, she's like, I'll buy it used, or I'll borrow it from someone, or I'll buy the game and then donate an equal amount to a trans charity. She's like, I grew up with this stuff, and this is my dream Harry Potter game, and I have to find a way to do this that doesn't make me feel like I'm betraying myself, basically. It's a horrible position to have yourself put in. I feel really bad for people. I don't have that conflict with Star Wars, but if I did, I can't imagine what I would be.
The conflict. It would
the
suck.
hoops I'd be jumping through mentally to justify that to myself.
It would suck. Look, the reason we're really talking about this, though, isn't really J.K. Rowling, because we've talked about that on GameFace before. The reason we're talking about it today is because the lead designer on the game, who came out,
he's not like the director, but he's one of the.
Well, his title was lead designer on the game.
Yeah, but they have a bunch of lead designers there.
Well, one of the lead designers on the game, it was uncovered, I believe, by Did You Know Gaming, of all places, the YouTube channel Did You Know Gaming.
There's a place that doesn't break the news very often.
But they broke this, and they found out that he had posted all these hateful things about Gamergate and other topics years ago. He was a Gamergater, and he defended Gamergate. And if you've watched GameFace for any amount of time, you know that we despise Gamergate, and we always will, and we'll always stand up against it. But he was a part of it, and he tried to defend Gamergate. And at first,
among many other things, he had a very, very prolific number of shitty opinions.
Yep. And at first, it appeared that he was going to stay in his position on Hogwarts Legacy.
Because I think the last video he put up was 2015 or so. It had been a long time. He had gone pretty silent on that YouTube channel, even though he'd left everything up, obviously.
Yep.
And claimed that that Avalanche knew and Warner Brothers knew about all of it.
And claimed initially that he was going to stay. And like you said, that they knew about it, and it wasn't like a deal breaker for them. They weren't looking to fire him. And then this week, he announced that he was, in fact, leaving the development team. And he still reiterated that, in his mind, that both Avalanche and Warner Brothers still did not have any problems with the stuff that he had created back in 2015 or whatever year it was, that this was his own decision that he decided to make. And then he said, and keep an eye on my YouTube channel because I'm going to talk about all this stuff on my YouTube channel. So, Matt, one, do you think really that Avalanche and Warner Brothers didn't care?
No.
I don't either.
I think they probably raised some concerns, and he was like, well, I'm not taking it down. And because it's, right along the lines of the whole, it's like, no, you can't cancel my opinion. It's like, okay, it's hot right now. And my guess, with no evidence to back it up, is that he maybe was just like, okay, I'm just gonna go. Like, you can't quit me. I fire you. He's like, because I feel like, in his position, maybe he thinks that the grift is hot. Like maybe if he goes back to his YouTube channel and starts makes himself sort of paints himself as a perfect victim of cancel culture, he can make more money off the suckers that will contribute to his Patreon than he would make developing the Harry Potter game.
I tend to agree with you. The fact that he would make the announcement and then make the point, I believe twice in the announcement, that, hey, check out my YouTube channel, YouTube video coming. Again, don't forget, I got this YouTube video that's coming. And also, I think he probably looked at it like, you know what? This job kind of sucks. I'm working really long hours.
Being a YouTuber is no picnic either, but at least you're working for yourself.
Well, I mean, I don't know, Matt. Sometimes I'm pretty blown away by some of these YouTubers who maybe just do a podcast 2 times a week, and then every once in a while they'll show a clip from their house, and they're filthy rich. They have a gigantic in-ground swimming pool in California, and they're living in a mansion, and they've got a Ferrari and a Porsche in their driveway. It blows me away sometimes how much money some of these people make.
Yeah, but you don't know how much debt there is there.
That could be. I mean, you're right. They could be taking out loans on that stuff. I don't know. But look, my point is there's a lot of money to be made for certain types of people on YouTube. And I could honestly see where he would look at it and be like, you know what? For a certain kind of person, there aren't a lot of people like me out there.
Yeah. All you need is to all you need in that regard is to make enough videos or get watched enough by the same viewers that you get the algorithm to start recommending you after Ben Shapiro videos, right, and you're in.
Yeah.
That's how the algorithm drives you further and further in whatever direction of things you're interested in. It's very transparent. People talk about it being biased towards the right wing stuff. I don't think that's true. I think it's just because right wing stuff gets people to engage so readily and it sucks you into the cult kind of thing. But I've watched 2 videos of G.I. Joe things, and all of a sudden I'm getting G.I. Joe stuff for days, military recruitment stuff, gun comparisons. Once you show YouTube you might be interested in this one thing, it will constantly show you stuff that tries to pull you deeper into that topic.
It does.
And it's just some topics are stickier than others, and kind of the alt-right Gamergate stuff is very, very sticky for certain people.
Well, you got to figure there probably aren't that many options, because let's be honest, most of the people who do this are not hard right-wingers. They're either moderates or they lean to the left. And so if you are a person who really loves games and you're also a hard right leaning politically, there aren't a lot of options out there. So you're right. If he gets sort of added on to that whole playlist with Ben Shapiro and some of those other people, he could hit a gold mine, literally hit a gold mine.
All you need is one mention by the quartering and you're kind of gold.
I mean, honestly, if Ben Shapiro mentions them and it's like, hey, here's somebody who's into games and I like games and they're like us.
And currently with the cancel culture stuff being the current boogeyman for the right, you very well might. Ben Shapiro mentioned stuff that feels really below his visibility level on a regular basis. So, I really feel like he thinks the anvil is ripe for the striking here.
He may even bring the guy on and be like, oh, were you canceled because you believe this?
That's possible. I mean, if I were this guy who's leaving, and sure I'm glad, and I would not be for all the world, because fuck that shit. But in his position, I would definitely be sending emails out to all these people being like, hey, I almost got canceled, but I I shot myself before they could get me kind of thing. It feels like he didn't get fired because he quit first. Yep. It seems to me.
Well, think about
probably what
Colin
happened
Moriarty,
here.
and I'm not saying that he's like this guy. He's not like hard right like this guy is. But after that stuff happened with Kinda Funny, the next day he was on Joe Rogan.
Right.
And where he talked about, I lean a little right, and so they wanted me out. And next day he launches his Patreon. So there's certainly a precedent for that. And again, I'm not saying Colin is like this guy. He's really nothing like that guy. But we're just talking about sort of the tactics you can employ.
Well, I don't know. When was the last time you asked Colin about trans people?
No.
But like...
he's not a Gamergator is my point. Colin isn't. I don't think he is, but maybe I don't know that well.
I don't think he is now. I seem to recall some sympathy.
He could have
in that
dog whistled
direction.
maybe to build an audience. I don't know. I don't follow him.
But that was earlier than any of the Patreon stuff. I guarantee you, whether it's fair to say that about Colin or not, this guy's looking at what Colin did. Sure. And he may contact Joe Rogan, and that may not be a fair comparison even on his part, saying like, "Oh, I'm just like Colin Moriarty." It's like, okay, dude, like, yeah. I don't agree with a lot of what Colin says, but I have very rarely been like physically repulsed by what Colin says. And I am physically repulsed by what this guy says. Yep. Like he is not in the same ballpark as Colin.
It is funny though, in this modern media environment, how you can manipulate audiences and algorithms and things like that to become really successful very, very quickly. It's scummy and it's cheap. And I would never do anything like that, but this guy may be looking at it like, man, I could work 80-hour weeks for the next 2.5 years trying to get this game done, or I could just go back to my YouTube channel and make probably as much money and work half as many hours. So
yeah, and if it doesn't work out for him, I'm sure he can get other work in game dev later.
Well, I think he would have had a better chance of that if he had stuck around until the game shipped. Because he does mention like, I don't want to leave game development, but like, with the reputation, I think it will be hard for him to get a job. I think if he had stuck around and finished the game and shipped the game,
somewhat. He's got a ton of Disney and Pixar credits under his belt, though. Like,
it matters.
That stuff matters, and high profile shipments of things. Disney Infinity, all the Pixar stuff. Some of that stuff was really high quality. Although, again, I will say
he seems to be good at his job. Let's be honest.
Yeah, and I will say that the other thing that gives me pause about this Hogwarts game is that those are the games they've made.
Yeah, you mentioned that before. We were just talking about the game.
That's one of my big reservations about this game. Is like you're not talking about the people that made. You're not talking about BioWare here. You're talking about the people that made Toy Story 3, the Toy Story 3 game, which is pretty good. And Disney Infinity, which I also liked, but did I like it in the way that I would want a Hogwarts action RPG to be?
No.
Yeah, it's
I hear you.
Like I'm worried about a Fable situation, I guess would be the way I'd say it. It's like if Fable, you were kind of expecting a deeper, more fully featured game, and we kind of just got like an action RPG light. Yeah. I'm a little worried about that, but that aside, like I don't think it would be that hard to find corporate employers that are not super bothered by his viewpoint or his YouTube channel down the road if he wanted to come back and start doing his old job again. I don't think that would be impossible.
Yep. The other thing too is that like losing this guy isn't that big of a deal for the game. The game has already been delayed into 2022, so I don't think that him leaving is going to have a huge impact on his quality or anything like that.
And also like again, it's not good to lose like heads of departments and stuff, but this guy was a lead in a squad kind of thing, it seemed like, but like these companies are built to lose and gain people. Like you're not going to be able to hang on to everybody through a whole multi-year project. People come and go. So it's different when like Halo Infinite loses its like game design, its lead designer. Like this is like, oh, that doesn't seem, or somebody with director or something, and it feels like, oh, that's bad. Like it's bad when it's bad when Kubrick leaves in the middle of production. It's different when like the gaffer leaves,
right, when you lose a grip or something. Yeah, it's a little different. So anyway, that's Hogwarts Legacy. Again, it's been delayed into 2022. It shouldn't be that much longer where we start seeing, I think, like real stuff from this game though.
I would think we would see, at least for like whatever passes for E3 this year, we would see some real stuff.
Yeah.
Also because they got to start getting out ahead of all this shit.
Yep.
Like
Because right now the internet's just stewing on it. Like,
yeah, they got to get out ahead, both in terms of what the game is, how it plays, and how, because there's two ways to get around the controversy you're that's built into this. And one is to show people a game that they cannot resist playing if they're a Harry Potter fan, and the other is to get out there and say, like, we don't support all that. We understand why you're upset about J.K. Rowling. We understand, without saying that directly, because you probably can't say that about the person who's giving you the IP. But like basically being like, in the same way of, basically what would be, a lot of times is negatively used, but doesn't have to be negatively used. Virtue signaling. Yeah. Like you hold up a flag that says like, hey, like we're stuck here, but we know the deal, and we're trying to show you that like we hear you. We're going to try to do some, like putting, the option to be a trans character in the game.
The fig leaf.
Yeah, which is like, again, that would be a huge step. Like that's how many other games let you do that?
Not many.
Like pretty much maybe Saints Row has that gender slider, and that's about it. Like even Cyberpunk, which you'd think would be the place you would really mess with trans stuff and certainly transhumanist stuff. You're stuck with whatever gender your voice is. Yeah. Like you can't have a female character with a deep voice or a male character with a high voice, which is ridiculous. Like if you're gonna go there, go there.
And it's
if you're
so
gonna show
easy
me
to turn on, like
if you're gonna show me like a flopping physics oriented penis on my character model, why can't you just let me choose whether that's male or female? Yeah. What's the problem?
Yeah, it's not it's a decision that the studio made. Yeah.
So I think and it would be kind of funny to me that a game made out of J.K. Rowling's IP might be the first game to really progressively let you play as a created trans character. Like that would be, and I wonder what that internal meeting's going to look like.
I would like to see her face when she sees it for the first time, for sure.
Yeah.
Yep. All right, let's move on.
Especially because it's going to determine which dorm you're in, which is kind of her whole thing.
That's true. That's right. Yep. Okay, let's move on. We're going to talk about something that Matt was discussing earlier. Actually, we both were discussing earlier. When we were talking about Nintendo fans, and I said, you know what, well, there are PlayStation fans that are just as bad and Xbox fans that are just as bad. And Matt brought up, though, there's something the PlayStation fans that are very angry about right now. And that is that it appears that more...
It's hilarious because you think PlayStation fans would just be on the moon right now. Like if there's a company that is basically way ahead in terms of delivering what a gamer wants, from a first party company, it has to be Sony right now.
Yep.
But you always got to be mad about something.
Yeah.
In this business. So.
And in this case, people are angry because at first, I think a lot of people thought PlayStation games coming to PC, the way Sony handled it at first, it was almost like a Trojan horse, Matt, because the first games that were PlayStation exclusives that went to PC were games that either didn't sell like gangbusters or underperformed, or fans weren't over the moon about them. So you get Death Stranding, which is Kojima's game, which Sony spent a lot of money building. It didn't sell especially well. Fans weren't really crazy about it. People liked it and they appreciated it, but it wasn't one of those like feathers in the cap. Like if you're a PlayStation fan, you're like, we got this game. Poof. It wasn't like that. It was like, it's cool, I'm glad we got it, but they weren't that upset that it went to PC. And then you have Days Gone, which some people, I think most people liked more than Death Stranding, to be perfectly honest with you. It had a bigger defense force, at least it seemed. But the game
Days Gone is initial. You had Horizon between those.
Yep. Days Gone still hasn't come out for PC, but the announcement hasn't raised a lot of ire with fans. And I think a lot of people...
Because no one gives it... Days Gone is an interesting one because I do see some people that are very, very into that game. Yeah. And it mostly just surprises me that game could provoke such a strong response one way or the other.
But I think those people, they want it to do well. And so I think they put the whole, like, that's an exclusive and they shouldn't put that on PC. They put that aside to say, you know what? I really like this game. I want to see another one. And that studio deserves to make more money off of this game. So please put it on PC so I can get the sequel. I can get Days Gone 2.
I think that's happening regardless, but...
What do you mean it's happening regardless?
I think Days Gone 2 is already in production.
Right.
But like
it sold well enough for a sequel for sure.
Yeah, it did. I mean, for a new IP from a new studio. I'm not a new studio. Sony Bend is not a new studio, but it was their first kind of like they've been stuck on handhelds for a long time, and here was their first like big AAA thing. And I was not a huge fan of it, but I thought it was very promising, and I'd like to see what another one looked like. But I bet Days Gone 2 will be excellent.
Yep. And fans seem to be cool with that. And they were cool with Horizon too, but I think a big part of Horizon was that it was like a launch game. And so they had it exclusively for like 5 years. And I think anyone's going to be okay with that.
No, it wasn't that long. It was 3 years, but it's 2017.
That's right.
But like Horizon's other issue was like Horizon launched bad on PC. Like it's still not fixed.
Yeah, it's getting better, but still not.
It's gotten better, but it's not great.
I don't know if it's ever going to get to where it really needs to.
Probably not. Like I don't think you can overcome the hump of the animations being tied to the 30 frames a second rate. Yeah. I think it was just never built to be on better hardware. Yep. But again, it was the same engine as Death Stranding, so it kind of made sense as a port. And I assume it did fine. Like it's. I mean, I certainly know a lot of PC only people who were excited to play it. They weren't too excited once they got their hands on it in the condition it was in. But there was definitely interest there. It's not like it was mostly people. It's like, oh, I can't afford to buy a PlayStation and keep my PC up to date, and I chose my PC. And if you're going to let me play PlayStation games on my PC, great. Like they're interested in those games. They just don't want to buy a PlayStation for them. Yep. Which is, it's fair.
Yeah. So those 3 games announced, at least 2 of them have been released already. Not a big bunch of uproar, but then this week, I think it started cutting a little closer to the bone because a very reliable Twitter feed that has broken tons of big PlayStation news and other news in the past. It actually had been kind of dormant for a while, and it just sprung back to life with some big news that God of War, Ghost of Tsushima, Bloodborne, and the Uncharted collection are all coming to PC. And this comes right after the head honcho at PlayStation said, oh, more of our games are coming to PC. So you line up those 2 things, and it seems pretty definitive that, in fact, these games are coming. Now, I will say this. Bloodborne's pretty old. What year did that come out? Was that 2017 as well?
I want to call Bloodborne 2015.
Yeah, maybe even older. But Bloodborne is like beloved. It is one of those, that is a feather in the cap for a lot of PlayStation fans. That is something that they're like, yep, only we got that. And on top of that, you have God of War, which is, in my opinion, the game of the generation and the biggest feather in the PlayStation 4's cap for most people. And then you have Ghost of Tsushima, which just came out not that long ago. Just it hasn't even been a year yet that game's been out. Uncharted, I think most people will be willing to give a pass. Uncharted 4 has even been a while since that game came out. But those other 3, those are big, big games, Matt. Do you think that PlayStation fans are ever going to be okay with these games coming to PC?
I mean, well, first off, I'll believe all of this when I see it.
So you don't believe that this is true?
No, not really.
Okay.
I think, look, Bloodborne is so heavily requested, and it's the only From Software game that isn't on PC. I feel like half a decade later, you can let it go. I mean, Sony did help fund it, so it's like kind of their call. But Bloodborne on PC would not shock me at this point, just because Sony's made their money on it. You're probably going to want to think about doing a PS5 update for it anyway. And as long as you're doing that, you could probably kind of wedge that into the PC project somehow.
That's a good point.
PC development on that would probably benefit a PS5 upgrade somehow, I would think. And it's the having it on there and opening up to mods and stuff like that. I bet From Software would like to have all their stuff together on PC so the community can kind of play with it and tweak it and stuff. That would make a lot of sense to me. The other stuff, like Uncharted, that's kind of the ship is sort of sailed on that one in terms of, Sony San Diego is probably going to take their shot at Uncharted soon.
Yep.
But that first trilogy, the Amy Hennig trilogy, is sort of they made their money on that. God of War and Ghost of Tsushima, that's a harder one to swallow for me. Not because I don't think it would be good, because I think God of War on PC would be amazing to see. I mean, and especially with mods and weird stuff you could do with like that, the mind reels at what a PC version of God of War would open up.
It really does.
I
would probably play it again.
Yeah, I would see. God
I've
of War
almost
and
thought about playing it again on PS5.
For me, God of War and Ghost of Tsushima are the two. I will believe that when they announce it.
Ghost of Tsushima is the one that stands out the most to me.
Tsushima is so recent.
It's so recent. And it,
But
here's the other thing,
I don't think
Matt.
it's impossible. I just saying, I feel like it's got to be years later.
Well, here's the other thing, though. I feel kind of about Ghost of Tsushima the way maybe some PlayStation fans feel for Days Gone. I don't feel like it sold as well as it deserves to have sold. It didn't sell terrible. It didn't tank or anything like that. And it sold well enough that I think, if they want to make another one, they can and they will. But it did not sell to the level that it deserves. And I feel like more people need to play this game so that the sequel, that will be at least a timed exclusive on PlayStation platforms, will do better than the first game did. So I hear you. Like, I hear if you're a PlayStation fan and you're like, oh, wait, like that game's not even a year old and they're already talking about it coming out for PC. I understand why people would be upset about that and maybe a little pissed off about it. But man, that game is so amazing. Like, more people need to experience that game. They need to make more money and recoup the cost of that game more than they have at this point. And I don't know.
I mean, that sold pretty well. It was 5 million in November.
Yeah.
They're doing fine with that, I think, for a new IP. I mean, would I like to see what that looks like with ray tracing?
Yeah,
on
I mean, that's the other
full
thing.
PC rig?
Like, selfishly,
yeah,
it's like, that's when you're talking about God of War running on a PC, like a big rig. Like, that might convince me to upgrade my PC. A game that good, if they can promise me a huge upgrade over what we're getting now. Because the PS5 version, it looks good, but let's be honest, it's really just kind of like resolution. They didn't do a lot of work to it. If they created like an ultimate version that ran on PC and also on PlayStation 5 that has all the new tricks of all the new NVIDIA hardware, I'll play it again. Absolutely. And I never play games twice, ever. I don't have time for it. A lot of times I don't have an interest in even doing it. But if they were to put it out on PC with a ton of improvements, I'm there. I'm in for that. So it's dicey. Like, to me, I agree with you. It's too early, I think, to even announce that Ghost of Tsushima is coming to PC. Like, it just doesn't feel right for that to happen yet. But at the same time, I totally understand if they were to do that, why they would do that. Like, it's tough.
I can see like God of War like coming out on PC alongside Ragnarok next year.
Yeah.
Sort of like kind of that's how you PlayStation gets the new one and PC gets the last one. Sort of they want to
convince people to buy a PS5 and play the new one. Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, that
like
makes
if you
sense
want to, or if you don't want to buy a PS5, it's like, oh, you just got to wait a few years, but you get a better version of the game. It's sort of a trade-off there.
Yeah.
And I'm sure there's plenty of people who have both who would double dip to get the high-end fancy graphics on the PC version.
Yep.
Certainly. And also, like, I think you're more likely to get a double dip if you wait a few years, because that's about when I'm going to start thinking about playing God of War again. Right?
True.
Yeah. And it's like, if you're going to dangle this like new version in front of me that has all these new bells and whistles graphically, like, yeah, I'm going to think about it. Like, that's going to be a thing.
Matt, what's the algorithm? What's the formula to where you don't start convincing people that they don't need to buy your new hardware? I guess is what I'm getting at. Because if people start seeing this and they're like, well, I can't think of too many games that I can't wait a year or 18 months to play. And you know what? Maybe it's just better for me to build a PC and get myself an NVIDIA graphics card if I can ever freaking find one. Seriously, like, it's absurd. Like, they launched a new card the other day, and like, I realized I'm not even going to try to buy it or even look into buying it because I just know it's impossible. Like, it's absurd where we're at with GPUs right now. But anyway, maybe you start thinking about this is the better idea. And the PC, you can use it for so many other things besides playing games. Like, there's a reason that PC sales have gone through the roof during the pandemic. A lot of people are starting to see it as a value. And so you start to wonder, if you're Sony, like, where is that line? What's the line where I'm like, we can't talk about this coming to PC yet because we need people to buy our console? That is PlayStation's business. That is Sony's business. It's not being a third-party publisher on PC. What is the line? Where is the line?
3 years.
Yeah, that seems to be it. Like,
that would, if I'm Sony, I'm saying 3 years is like a comfortable space where the game doesn't look outdated. It's still interesting to people, but you've made your money in your window on PlayStation, and you are not bringing it out soon enough that PC people are going to think that's a reasonable amount of time to wait. Because 3 years is too long for me to wait for a game, and so I'm sure PC only players are going to hear that. 3 years is like, yeah, it is too long. That's the point.
Yeah,
like they don't want you to wait, but they also want your money if you are absolutely dedicated to waiting.
Yep.
So I'd say 3 years is about my sweet spot for that if I'm Sony.
Now, you're saying 3 years for release or 3 years to announce?
I would say a bit of both, depending on, because I would try to release alongside the next installment of something.
I mean, that really seems to be the smartest thing, right? And however long that takes, like...
Yeah, however long that is, which is probably 3 to 4 years with Sony.
Typically, yeah. You get a couple stragglers that are closer to 5.
Like I would, like as soon as the first time I really blow out a new, not when I tease the game for the first time, but the first time I blow out the sequel, like that first time we saw The Last of Us 2, the demo where she runs around and kills all the people in the little like burned out store area, I would also say, and Last of Us 1 is coming to PC.
And then it'll release for PC alongside
right around that time
when this comes out for PS4, now PS5. That makes sense.
Yeah, to kind of give PC players something to get involved in, and then like, I'm playing this, it's really good. I'm sure looking at that sequel that just came out. I wonder how much is a PlayStation 5. Like, it's a psychological tactic, but it might work well enough for a certain. You get 10% turnover on that, you're doing pretty well. Yeah. Not that they need to worry about selling more PlayStation 5s right now.
Yeah, so if you think about a series like Uncharted, like to me, they're good. Like they could put out the Uncharted stuff on PC tomorrow, and I don't think anyone is going to bat an eyelash. Because Uncharted 4 was 2016?
That sounds right.
Yeah. So yeah, like go for it, and maybe you use Uncharted as like kind of the first one, and then you build from there. Maybe Bloodborne is the next one.
Because the Uncharted games are PS3 games.
Yeah, they're really old. And would the collection include Uncharted 4?
No.
So it'd just be the first 3, the Hennig saga.
I mean, traditionally they haven't. So I mean, you could put Uncharted 4 in there, but I would say the PS3 games kind of hang together as their own trilogy, and then 4 is sort of the capper. So
I think even Uncharted 4 at this point, good to go.
You could. Yeah, I just think you'd sell Uncharted 4 separately.
Yeah.
Maybe with Lost Legacy combined with it.
Yep. Yeah, just roll it in as one piece. And then maybe also you have the PS, although that game, we're looking at B-roll right now. The game still looks amazing. It really is just a gorgeous flipping game. I don't know if they'd have to do a ton of work on Uncharted 4 to make PC players happy.
The question always becomes like, getting the engine to work, whatever in-house stuff they use, whatever tricks they use to make all that crazy physics stuff work, and making it work on PC. You never know what's going to break when you try to switch platforms.
Yeah, as we learned.
And some stuff might end up not coming to PC just because they try it and it's all fucked up, and they're like, this is going to take a lot of work to fix, and they just are like, well, forget it. Sort of like why we never got any remasters or ports for Red Dead Redemption 1.
Yep, that's true.
Because some of the stuff you do to get something to work on established hardware, when it doesn't ever need to be on other hardware, can get real weird and kludgy. It's the old thing where it's like I can't remember what game it was, but it was like people were like clipping through walls and like doing like little things, and they found there's like a little room you couldn't access, and there's just an orange in the middle of it.
Yeah.
And this might be apocryphal, I don't remember, but like there's just an orange in the middle of it, and somebody finally asked one of the devs, like, why is there an orange in the middle of an empty room that you can't access in the side of itself? And he's like, we had that there, and then if you took the orange out, the game breaks. So we just left the orange there.
That's funny.
And built a room around it so it would stay there. It's like sometimes that's how simple it is. It's just like, if we remove the orange, the game crashes. So we just left the orange there.
Yep.
That's it.
So
and it's you never know.
So I think the sequel plan works for games like every game, but a game like Bloodborne, which I don't know if we'll ever get a Bloodborne 2, to be honest with you.
I feel like if we were we would have gotten it by now.
Yeah.
But like the other thing is like, because of Bloodborne's audience, like Bloodborne's a kind of a special case because of how the audience is built, and how PC centric the Souls audience tends to be.
Yeah.
Like if I were Sony and I wanted to really get crazy, I would put Bloodborne out on PC, and then based on response to that, go forward with a Bloodborne 2, and I would release Bloodborne 2 on both platforms at the same time.
That won't happen though.
Because Bloodborne, I would consider Bloodborne a special case.
Yeah.
Because you will get so much backlash from the PC community if you keep it on PlayStation and do it later, because it's so vital that like that stuff gets discovered as it gets discovered. That I think that would be the only time that I, as Sony, could justify a simultaneous release.
That's a tough sell. I think PlayStation fans would be really salty over that one.
Yeah, but who cares?
Well,
salty
if
over
you're
it.
Sony, you care, definitely.
It doesn't matter when you do it. They're gonna be salty if you release God of War on it 10 years from now. Like it doesn't, if you put God of War PS3 collection out right now, everybody be yelling about it. It's like God of War 1 is from the PS2 days, dude. Like who cares if you can play it on you can play it on PC now with an emulator. Like it's not an issue. But they'd still yell about it, I guarantee you. So you can't make your business decisions based on who weirdo console warriors scream about.
It really is a case-by-case basis with these games.
Yeah.
You really have to look at each game specifically and think about how the fans are going to react to each one and then act accordingly. But I think so far, Sony's done a pretty good job. And if, in fact, all these games are coming to PC, I have faith that Sony will do at least a decent job of getting them out in a sequence where fans won't
somewhat. I mean, you really do need to look at how Horizon launched and say they need to do much better than that.
Yeah.
Like, would I like to play God of War on a high-end PC? Yes, but I'd like it to work as well as it does on PlayStation.
Yeah.
Which Horizon does not.
And
comparison.
It's kind of hard to figure out if that stuff's going to work. Although they're going to learn. They'll learn from Horizon.
Yeah.
But it's hard to figure out if that stuff's going to work until you've actually started doing it. So maybe you wait and you don't even announce this stuff literally until it's like a month out or something like that.
You're definitely. I think it's going to be a case by case. Like, is this even going to work basis?
Right.
Like I said, like once you port this stuff over, is it just hopeless? Like, or would it just be too much time and money to justify what you're doing? I think that might happen. Not constantly, but I think it might happen more often than we might like. So I think the assumption that everything Sony makes will make it to PC now is probably a flawed one.
Yeah,
although going forward,
I don't think that.
Like going forward, if you know that's a possibility, that's a thing you can plan for now.
Yeah.
But there's probably going to be a gap here where
my guess is
who knows?
PlayStation starts building games with PC in mind. That going forward,
or at least with
it's going to start building games, and it's going to be like, let's make sure that how we build these games, they're going to be able to port to PC without a lot of problems.
Or at least with a team that does PC stuff that can sort of like work alongside, and as they bring things in, they'll be like, oh, well, we'll take that and we'll fix it over. Yeah, it's going to be easier to do that as the development process happens than like here's a giant lump of code. Good luck, or two very different things. Yep. And it might, who knows? It might improve stuff on the console end too, to have that extra input. You never know. Sure. Like, more brains working on something is never really a bad thing when it comes to this sort of stuff.
Especially when they're smart people. Yep.
Yeah.
Makes a difference. All right, let's move on. We're going to talk next about Marvel's Avengers. Again,
throw your brains out the window, folks.
The never-ending story.
We're in the no brain zone now.
This game just won't go away. And talking about the no brain zone.
Oh, I think this game might go away sooner than you think.
I don't know, man. I'll say this: they're not giving up, dude. Like, they won't give up.
They're not giving up till they give up.
The problem is that they just everything they try, it does. A lot of it just doesn't make sense. A lot of things that they're trying to do to fix the game. And I think the thing that makes the least sense of all is the stuff that was announced this week. So, Matt, somehow they've decided that making it easy for players to level up in the game is a problem. That they feel like they've overloaded the player with leveling and new abilities and new features to the point that is what is turning people off from continuing to play the game. Do you think that's one of the major problems with Marvel's Avengers, Matt?
One of the problems with Avengers is not me being overwhelmed by too many things to do. No.
It's definitely not being overwhelmed with too much awesome. I really do not think that is the problem with Avengers.
I don't know what they're thinking here. I mean, I know what they're thinking. They're thinking slow people down so they don't run out of content as fast.
Exactly. That's what they're talking about.
But
really.
It's incredibly transparent. They're not exactly the first people to try this. And like, who do you think you're fooling?
Yeah, it's absurd. So typically, I don't know if it may be a long time since some people have played it, or maybe some people didn't play it at all because of the word on the street about this game, and they don't really realize it. But typically when you're playing this game, if you completed a mission, you would level up like 2, 3, even in some cases like 4 levels in one mission, which maybe is a little bit absurd, but...
This slowed down a good amount by the time you got in the high levels. I mean, I certainly didn't max anybody out just playing through the game.
Well, here's the thing. It's like it's a superhero game. So it's hard to start someone out as a superhero that doesn't feel like a superhero. So to me, in the early stages of the game, they need to level up quickly. You need to be getting new abilities quickly. You need to feel like you're playing as a superhero instead of some character that can just punch and kick and maybe fly. So to me, it's smart to make the early portions of the game make the leveling go really quickly.
Yeah. Like, I didn't think there was a problem with it. I mean, you level up fairly quickly. You get access to the basic elements of each skill tree and ability tree. And then, like, the rest of your leveling is sort of like specializing in how you like to use those abilities. And some of the specializing takes a while because of the level grind. But, like, by the time I got about halfway, 3/4 of the way through the story with most of the characters, I felt like I was playing as that character in a complete way.
Yeah.
Which requires that I had access to all of Iron Man's lasers and missiles and various things, and Ms. Marvel's ability to embiggen and stretch and do this move and that move. And like, you want to give everybody the basics pretty quick, which is why I figured they leveled up so quickly in the early part of the story and campaign stuff. If you want to make me like grind my way through with like half a repulsor beam for like half the campaign, that's annoying. Or unless they mean to slow you down near the end of the game. Like, I just don't know why anyone's playing that game past the campaign in the first place. So I guess it doesn't really matter, but like.
That's a good point. And to be fair, basically what they're doing is they're not going to slow down the early leveling as much. It's really once you reach level 25. That's when they're going to start slowing it down.
That's slow enough as it is, I think.
I know. It's like, dude, it's hard enough to get me to keep playing after level 25, and you're going to slow down my progression? It's so dumb. And the reason this is all happening...
What else am I looking forward to then? Loot?
Right,
I don't see it at all? Like, it's stupid.
Well, they were saying that, like, they're completely eliminating cosmetic drops. They're getting rid of them. Like, they said that they're temporarily disabling them, but they may not come back. Let's be honest. Once you take something like that out, it's kind of weird to bring it back and just all of a sudden there they are again. And the reason all this is happening is because the next-gen upgrades are coming for this on March 18th. Yeah, March 18th. The PS5 and Series X upgrades are launching, and they are free upgrades. If you already own the game, you can upgrade it for free. So that's cool. At least they're not trying to charge you for something that you probably don't care about and may not want anyway. But they're trying to roll a bunch of stuff into this big update on March 18th, including the Hawkeye DLC, which I cannot believe we're still waiting for.
Yep.
It's crazy, Matt. Like, what the hell? And why are they worrying about, like, algorithms and slowing down leveling when the DLC still isn't out that they've been marketing since the beginning?
Where's Spider-Man?
I don't think that's
ever
coming out. I don't think that's ever coming out. Like, the way they're prioritizing their time on this game is wrong. They're fixing stuff that isn't broken, and they still haven't delivered the content that people actually care about that will keep people playing. It's like, it's not the leveling that's making people quit. It's there's no compelling content to keep playing. It's bonkers, dude. What is wrong with these? What are they doing?
Well, I mean, they didn't, I don't know what, like, I look at what's there, like the framework that's there, and I don't know what you can do with it to make you play past the campaign. Like,
well, you create more campaign content with new characters that people care about.
Right. Like, you basically should be making these games should be narrative games. Like, they should be each character that comes out should have a little mini campaign, and they do. But like, it's not particularly also like, look, I like Hawkeye, but you just put Kate Bishop out and you're going to give me another bow and arrow character.
Yep.
Like, give me Black Panther or something here. Like, come on.
Yeah,
like,
I honestly, to me, Hawkeye is one of the least interesting characters from the Avengers. Like, if I had to like rank the Avengers in order of the characters I care about, he would be at the bottom, which is why I get that he's DLC, but still.
I think if you read the comics, he'd rank higher. He's a better character in the comics. If you're familiar with him from the movies, he's just Jeremy Renner. Like there's no real recommendation
he's just
there.
A dude. Yeah,
who
doesn't have really amazing powers. Like,
I mean, he even calls that out in Age of Ultron. He's like, I have a bow and arrow. We're fighting robots. This doesn't make any sense.
Yep.
Which I'm pretty sure was Jeremy Renner ad-libbing, and they just left it in the movie. But here we are.
Yep.
Hawkeye is not an exciting get me to install that game again edition. Sorry, Clint.
Me either. I mean, I'm not gonna install it again and upgrade. I mean,
especially after Kate. Like, I already played a bow and arrow character.
The other problem is I have the PS4 version of the game, and my PS5 hard drive has been full for like months.
Right, that is also.
Am I going to delete something that I actually play for something that I just want to check out? Probably not.
Yeah, especially not that install size. That's a big download. It's
a big game now. Yeah, so. Is there any saving this other than like doing something that they're not going to do? We just create a huge campaign for all these DLC characters.
Mm-hmm. Well, I mean, I would think they might do that because the campaign ends on pretty much a cliffhanger.
Yeah.
Not a cliffhanger for but basically you finally got the Avengers together, and there's the implication that like the Celestials are going to get involved or something. Like there's definitely some stuff happening at the end where I'm like, oh, that's a tease.
Yeah.
Tease for a bigger thing. So they seem to think they were going to do more campaign.
But if you're just going to throw me out into the open world, no thanks. I don't want that. That content is boring and dull to me.
I mean, we'll see what they do by like September because that's the year anniversary.
Right.
But like, it's just astounding to look at this, and then I look at other like kind of games that are some of them that are free to play, like Warframe and Path of Exile, and it's like they're putting out new story content monthly. Sometimes.
That's compelling. Yeah.
Yeah. And you can't get this together with with a very experienced developer, one of the biggest publishers in the world,
one of the most valuable IP in the world.
Biggest IP in the world.
It's like the most valuable IP in the world, and they can't make it work. Like, this game should be way more successful than it is. We should be waiting with bated breath for the next DLC for this, Matt. Like, it's just insane that we're not.
Well, I think this is one of your, I said earlier, like, I think the game as a service thing is on its way out. I think this is one of those high profile failures. Like, between this and Anthem, if I were a major publisher, I'd be terrified to touch the game as a service model after these two.
I mean, really, the better idea is the ongoing game. Like, we were talking about.
How many millions of dollars have these companies sunk into these two games, and they sold well at the beginning, but did not become this like imaginary constant wheelbarrow of cash on a conveyor belt that everybody seemed to think that was what this model would be.
But Matt, let's be honest, they should have been.
And then you compare it to like Miles Morales, and it's almost like, oh, it might be better just to make a really good game.
Yeah, that you can sell 15 million copies of and call it a day and make a sequel.
Yeah.
Yeah. And not have to spend the risk of setting up the server, everything. It's
servers
just,
and having a constant team there to just churn stuff out.
Monitor stuff and make sure people aren't breaking things and all that
and
crap.
Then they can't do that because they have to come around and fix the game because it launched so weird. And like, it's a mess.
It is a mess.
And it's a shame because it's like, finally we get an Avengers game. And the campaign's pretty good. Like, I enjoyed the story and all that.
And as soon as it ended, I did not care anymore.
It really lost all its steam. I mean, and I tried. I played some of the post game, quote unquote mini campaign stuff where you're doing stuff for Shield and all that.
I tried it too. I didn't care. It was just very bland and dull and.
And a Kate Bishop thing was fine. Like, it was cool. A little bit of cutscene, a little story, new boss, but like,
not enough.
Okay.
Yep.
No, and certainly not enough to like level the character up to the point that I wouldn't have to just grind forever to get back to where I was with everybody else, who I'm not even done grinding with in the first place. And then when I'm done grinding with it, why am I doing it? To do what?
Yeah.
Like, what am I doing? Like, there's no further content. There's nothing else to do. Like, I'm not grinding up to like raid bosses or anything here. Like, what am I going to do?
I know.
Like, why am I getting more powerful in this game? Why?
What's the point?
There's nothing to do.
I know. I hear you. So anyway, that's the latest on Marvel's Avengers. Some of you guys may have not played it at all, and maybe you're looking at March 18th, and you're like, I got a PS5, I got a Series X, and maybe that's the time to dive in. Like, as Matt and I were saying, the campaign's pretty damn good. Like, I enjoyed the first 20 hours of it or whatever, and if from that regard, if you don't have it yet, it's probably worth picking up for that, to play it on the better
content. I mean, but if you don't, it's just sort of like, well, do I download do I re-download Avengers or do I watch the Snyder cut? It's like, do you want to get hit in the balls or punch in the face? March 18th is not great. March 19th, we get Falcon and the Winter Soldier, which, by the way, how are you not launching Falcon with this the day before? I'm like, come on. Like, there's no synergy. There's no plan. There's no there. It feels almost as hopeless as Anthem did at this point.
Yeah, but I think if you have not played it at all, like, the 18th is probably a good time to jump in. You also got to remember there aren't a lot of games coming out right now. So.
The best time is when it's on sale.
Yes. And I don't think they are putting it on sale on the 18th.
Probably not for that. I would think they want you. But I would say, let's see how that next gen update comes out. And then maybe next time it's on sale for like $30 or something. It's a decent campaign for that kind of money.
Yep. All right.
Until they pull the plug.
Yep. All right, let's move on. We're going to talk next about something that I feel like we've been teased with for a long time, Matt, and that is Microsoft playing with AR and VR. And to be fair, Microsoft really hasn't played with VR at all. It has rejected VR and in that way it's been smart.
It rejects your virtual reality and substitutes its own.
In that way, it's actually been smart because all these other companies have just poured tons of money into it and really lost their asses. Like just now, Facebook with Oculus Quest 2 is starting to kind of turn the corner a little bit, although rumors say that they're losing their ass on that hardware as well, and they're selling it at a loss and blah, blah, blah. So maybe Facebook still isn't making money on VR either. Instead, Microsoft has decided to go the augmented reality route with HoloLens. The first HoloLens we saw, we thought maybe it might be a consumer item. They showed it on stage at E3, like messing around with Minecraft and all this stuff. And then it never
lying about Minecraft.
Yeah. And then it never really came out for consumers. It ended up costing like $3,000.
Yeah, it was not. And also, like the thing you didn't see in those demos is that the viewable
look around
angle in that thing is like 30 degrees.
Yeah, you have to stand at like a very specific point.
Yeah, and you see, like you don't see, like the demo they showed on the press conference was like you saw the whole table was Minecraft. When you look through that thing, it's a sliver.
Yep.
Like and it's not a convincing thing at all. And it's not their fault. It's just how physics works.
Well, it's crazy too because you can't see it, but we're watching the trailer for the first HoloLens right now, and like watching this trailer, it's like mind blowing what it was supposed to do. Like it's like you're standing in your kitchen and there's TV screens all over your kitchen, and over on your desk there's a crotch rocket motorcycle that you're designing. Like first of all, it never was capable of doing any of this stuff the way it's portrayed in this trailer. Two, there's just the idea of somebody having it in their home is absurd. It cost $3,000. It was basically created for industrial purposes. Then HoloLens 2 came out, and essentially they said right from the get-go, this isn't for you. Like we're going to use this for industrial applications. This is for work purposes. This is for medical stuff. This is for distance learning stuff. They didn't even try to fool us with the second HoloLens, and they didn't show it working with games or anything like that. It was basically like, yep, we've released an updated version of HoloLens, and don't count on using it unless you're ready to spend a lot of money on it and then not get a whole lot of use out of it because nobody else is going to use it. But now, Matt, really what is the third iteration of HoloLens is a brand new platform called Microsoft Mesh. And Mesh isn't even really necessarily hardware. They are going to put out like a new like AR thing that'll work with it, but it also works with HoloLens, and it will also work with VR helmets, and it will also work on just a PC, and presumably it will also just work on your Xbox Series console. And essentially what it is like, what's the term that they use to describe it? It's called what was it?
Mm-hmm.
There's a word that they're using to describe it. It's called like holo something or other. Holo present or something. There's some catchphrase that Microsoft is trying to use. And it's basically this collaborative platform that you use with maybe your existing HoloLens, your existing VR helmet or whatever, that really creates like a hologram of a person in the room with you, where they can demonstrate things to you. Objects that they're working on can appear in 3D space with you. And it's kind of a collaborative tool that is going to be tied into what's Microsoft's like workspace called, where everybody can work together? There's a word for it. I can't remember. Microsoft Teams. That's what it's called.
Teams.
So it's basically a platform.
No Google Wave.
It's a platform that's going to work inside that platform to help people finally get use out of these HoloLens things that they spent way too much money on. There isn't a lot of game applications for it yet, and they're also not trying to fool us into thinking that, hey, this is going to be a new way to control your games, although they do show people using like Oculus Rift and the touch controllers to operate it. So there's some crossover with some of the VR stuff going on right now. But Matt, what do you think of this stuff? Do you think that Microsoft is just still like way too far out ahead on this technology and it's just not here yet? Like right now they're showing like people trying to do rehabilitation with doctors who aren't there, stuff like that. How far out do you think we're really away from this stuff being real?
As far out as we are from having implants in our brains.
Really?
Because there's no way to solve the viewing angle problem. Like you're always just going to get a little sliver on this thing, and because that's just how the light works going into your eye. And like you're not going to have peripheral vision on this. Like when you talk about like the demo with or the trailer, whatever you want to call it, the lie of
it is a lie,
the guy in the apartment with all the screens and the motorcycle and stuff. Mm-hmm. Like you will never see any of that over here. Like it's never going to look like that because the only thing you can see is like basically what you can focus on with your eye right here. And if you look over here, you're going to not see it because it's here on the lens. So like if I look over, if I don't turn my whole head, I'm not gonna. It's like early VR. Like it doesn't track your eye, so it's not gonna keep up with that. So everything over here is gonna be out of focus. Yeah. Whereas in AR, everything over here is not going to exist. So the only way I see to get to the point where you're looking at like hollow displays, like what they show in what they show in like Iron Man and that kind of thing, you're talking about either projection stuff, like actual projecting the holograms into the room, or being wired directly into your optic nerve and telling your brain to see that thing.
Which is like 100 years away, my guess is.
I wouldn't say
maybe not that far, actually. Now that I think about it.
I think we might see some of that by the time we're on our way out.
Well, remember we talked not long ago on GameFace about being able to control games with your brain. And like that's happening already.
Yeah, well, they will get there with that, but this is a very stopgap thing. This is the equivalent. A lot of the current AR stuff makes me feel like I felt when you go back and look at those old like Disneyland World of Tomorrow things, and like everybody lives in a plastic house and all the appliances fold out of the cabinets and stuff, and it's just like that's what you think is futuristic and where you're kind of trying to go, but like it's not practical and no one's ever going to actually live like that. The current state of AR is like that to me. I think, in my opinion, I don't think like this is sort of a stepping stone to the tech that we're gonna eventually have, but it's never gonna exist in a tiny lens that floats out here. Maybe you could do it in a contact lens that actually goes in your eye. That's something
scary.
You would have. That's something that I don't think it's scary anymore.
Having electronics on your eyeball, a little scary.
I mean, it's weirder things have happened. I mean, you're already putting the contact lens on there. Hard contacts aren't too different.
There's no electricity in a contact lens right now.
There's electricity in your eye.
Yeah,
it's okay.
Yeah.
I mean, it'd be very low voltage. It wouldn't really matter. But like you'd have to have some kind of power source, obviously. I'm curious what you could do with. I mean, it's not impossible that you could power those things by blinking, by using the friction. The friction created by blinking over them could be enough to kind of power a little sort of like micro dynamo sort of thing. But that's not my area of expertise, but I know that has been proposed. But that kind of thing is what you'll need for like full eye coverage to sort of create that illusion. Something out here is never going to do that fully unless you're talking about just sort of constant floating on the lens or on the glasses sort of thing where I've got like a little thing up here that tells me what direction I'm looking at. The Google Glass did
Google
that.
Glass stuff, yeah.
Like basically a heads up display. But in terms of creating like what are basically hallucinations in the room with you, you can't do that with a lens like that.
Yeah.
Not in the way that those videos present it.
Yeah, I mean the way they're presenting
something
the
you're
mesh,
looking directly at and do not deviate from and are in eye line of sight. It's such a limiting thing when you actually use it that it's horrendously disappointing. If I sound a little like weirdly like rigid on this, it's because I've done a couple of those AR things and I was bitterly disappointed by what it looked like.
Yeah.
It's just, I mean, and who knows, like plenty of times we've said like, oh, there's no way around this problem.
And somebody
and then
figures
we
it
found
out.
a way around the problem. It's like, just past week, a paper was published that basically proved that theoretically warp drive can happen.
Yeah, I saw that.
We just don't know how to build it, but the laws of physics allow it, basically. Yeah.
I saw a question I was watching something on YouTube last night, and they asked, okay, what happens when a black hole gets sucked into another black hole? And basically they said, like, you could go back in time. If you're a piece of matter in the vicinity of those, you would go back in time. So how do you harness that? That's so far above my pay grade, and so to me, so far away. But there are possibilities for sure. The guy who builds this stuff, HoloLens and Mesh, he has the best gig. Microsoft just keeps throwing money at him for projects that they know. I mean, seriously, they're just like, we have so much money. Like, let's just throw some over here to this dude who's crazy and actually make stuff and see what he comes up with. And I think that's just what Mesh is. Like, it's another.
Yeah. Well, also because if you actually do find that breakthrough,
it could be bigger than anything ever. So I'm glad that they do it. I'm surprised that they share their skunk works with the world as much as they do. Maybe it's a surprise.
Maybe. I feel like it's probably worth every once in a while kind of throwing something out there from there, just being like, hey, what do you guys think of this?
Yeah.
Oh, no, still no. Okay. Still want to pay $3,000 for it.
Cool,
okay,
bro.
Just
I mean, they put out trailers for this stuff, and they had, like, HoloLens on stage at E3. Like, I think maybe they go a little too far with how they promote it.
Also, I think you got to have something to show the executives.
Yeah.
And make them. It's sort of the R&D equivalent of look busy.
Yeah.
They are busy, but you got to make it look like you're making.
You got to show that you're busy. Yeah.
Yeah, and you can, as long as the people holding the purse strings, things like, oh, look at the cool stuff they did in that video. Like, that's all you need. It's like milk another 3 years out of it sometimes.
Yep. So anyway, there you go. That's Microsoft Mesh not coming to a home near you for a long, long time.
Not meshing with your household anytime soon.
Yep. Next, we're going to talk about something that you guys will probably care a little bit more about because it is related to consoles. And this week, it's not even officially released yet, but Microsoft released into its early access program for people who are in that, the new Edge browser for Xbox Series consoles. And the big deal with this is that it has a lot of, I don't want to get too technical, but it has a lot of elements built into it that Chrome has built into its web browser, which allows a lot of things on Series consoles that you weren't able to do before, which is like run Google Stadia inside the browser on your Xbox Series console, or run GeForce Now, or run xCloud and be able to use the storage in the cloud instead of having to use your local storage on your console. Matt, how big of a deal do you think this is for Series consoles? Being able to run Stadia on the console, is that a good idea for Microsoft?
It's a completely irrelevant one.
Really?
Yeah.
Why?
If you hadn't brought it up, I doubt I would ever have known.
Why? Why do you think it's irrelevant, though? You don't think people will care about Stadia? Or do you think that xCloud will be...
I think we've already established that nobody cares about Stadia. As far as I don't know, as far as GeForce Now, or I'm already on a game console. Why do I want to stream a game from another platform?
Well, if Stadia ever gets to a point where it makes more sense financially, I guess is the question. Which it could.
For what?
As far as maybe they get to a point where they're like, here's this huge library, give us $5 to play our library, whereas you're paying more for Game Pass. If they try to undercut Microsoft or whatever.
I would enjoy reading that amazingly positive breaking move timeline for Stadia because I do not see that. I do not see the glorious future, glorious Stadia future you have just painted. I don't think it matters.
Really?
No.
What about GeForce Now?
I think GeForce Now is a better service sort of thing, but I think most people don't even know what it is.
Or you mean that it exists at all?
Yeah. Also that
it has been around for 4 years and people still don't know about it. So you're probably right.
And it's just okay, so I have a GeForce Now thing. I'm like, I guess my thing is why wouldn't I just go and use my computer?
Well, some people don't have PCs.
But then how do they have GeForce Now?
Well, that's the point. They could now use GeForce Now on their Xbox Series console without a PC.
To play what?
The library that's on GeForce Now.
Like, do you get GeForce Now just automatically, or do you got to buy a card for that?
No, yeah, I mean, it's just a web interface. You don't have to own like an NVIDIA card or anything like that.
Well, then what's the point of it? Like for them, for NVIDIA? NVIDIA's just going to give me a bunch of games?
Yeah, it's a game service. They don't give them to you. You pay just like you do
pay
on
a
other
subscription thing?
Yeah.
I guess. Like, I don't.
I mean, the bigger question is there an opportunity for a streaming service on Xbox platforms at all?
I don't think so, no.
No?
I don't think there's an opportunity for them anywhere.
At all, period.
So I don't see why being on Xbox makes
You don't
a
think
difference.
no one's ever going to crack this nut? You don't think someone's going to figure out a way to make game streaming a success like ever?
Nope.
Really?
Doesn't make any sense for an interactive platform. It does for obviously for movies and TV and stuff, because you don't have to worry about them reading your inputs.
Right.
I guess if somebody were to kind of do literally the Netflix model with a wide enough variety of games running better than they would run on any existing platform for a cheap monthly fee, you could. But I don't know how you make money on that model.
I would also argue too that
how you play current games on it. Like, at no point do I feel like there's going to be a streaming service that makes my hardware in my house obsolete to play current stuff I want to play. And unless I hit a point where I don't want to own any hardware, but I do want to own really high-end display equipment, but I also want to spend money on a subscription, but I don't want to play anything that's less than a year old. Like, I don't see it like in an inferior way to just playing a game on native hardware when I'm already playing on a next gen console. Like, I just don't see it. I don't see the usage case. It's right. It's still right in the solution in search of a problem realm for me.
I would also argue that the storage thing, like not having to have to save things locally on your hard drive, isn't that big a deal for Xbox Series because it has a terabyte hard drive. It makes more sense on PlayStation 5, but it doesn't even have a web browser at all. So
right, and hopefully apparently I read somewhere that we're going to get finally an update on what SSDs we can stick in the PS5 in May or June, I think. A little late, but better than nothing, I guess.
Yeah.
Yeah. So PS5 had a web browser. I guess that would be more of a question.
Because it is a problem on PS5. Just being honest, like, I didn't think it was going to be as big of a problem as it is. It is a problem.
Yeah,
the hard drive space on PS5 is a problem.
And I mean, I would use an external hard drive for the PS4 stuff, but I don't know how far along they are.
I don't have any PS4 stuff. I just have PS5 stuff, and it's full, and it has been full. And every time I want to play something, I got to delete something. It's become very annoying and legitimately
I still have PS4
annoying.
stuff. Like, I have Street Fighter 5 on there and a couple of things.
I have nothing, no PS4, and I'm still.
But I'm down to nothing. I got no
Division
space
2.
left.
I had Division 2. I had to take that off to download a game to play.
Like, if I were to play the next gen update of Avengers, I would have to delete something.
Yep.
For sure.
Absolutely, me too. So, all right, just wanted to throw that by you. That's one of the bigger stories from this week. It just shows you how slow this week has been.
Yeah.
But you're right.
Also,
the lower third, to be fair, it says edge case. So it's something that
also to be fair, like, if I accidentally open Microsoft Edge on my PC, I close it as fast as I can. It's just like I got no interest in Microsoft's browser for any reason.
It's funny how Internet Explorer just got destroyed by Chrome, and
it
went from the king to an afterthought.
Edge. Fuck you.
And they still when I get a Windows update, they'll keep installing Edge on my PC.
Yeah, like, you want Edge to be
I don't want
default.
It to be my default
I do
browser.
not want Edge to be the default browser.
I
would rather have Netscape Navigator be the fucking
Does Netscape still
browser.
exist?
No, not for a long time.
Yeah.
The vast majority of people, if you want to see a blank look, find someone who was born after 1990 and just say Netscape to them. They won't know what
even AOL at this point might elude them.
Usually they know what AOL is, but Netscape is a different thing.
Because AOL's become like a joke or a meme at this point.
Or
dial-up.
What was some of the other things?
AOL.
And I guess Ask Jeeves is still around. Tell a 20-something about Usenet if you really want to get people blown out of the water.
Or GeoCities. Yep.
No, GeoCities. eWorld,
Yeah,
which
all
was
that
Apple's
old internet
short-lived
stuff. Or BBS, that's another one.
BBS's, CompuServe, like there's people that still know their CompuServe and ICQ numbers. You know,
I'm interested in chat if anybody in chat knows anything about what we're talking about.
Oh, of course
right
they
now.
do. We have plenty of 40-somethings.
Yeah, we have people old enough for sure. Yeah, they don't know. But I bet you there's a lot that don't. They're like, what the hell are Matt and Shane talking about?
I was looking through something recent. It was I think it was an old episode of X Play that was uploaded. One of the old fans has been putting up all the X Plays in order.
I've noticed that. Yeah.
And one of them, early one was from Tech TV era, and it had all the commercials intact.
Oh,
and it
gosh.
was
like straight off the TV.
Yeah, it was like a 4-minute ad for CompuServe. I was just like, oh, wow. I remember how excited we were when we got that contract. It's like, oh, CompuServe, we're in the money now. It's like, remember how excited we'd get when like credit card companies advertised on the network?
Well, on Tech TV, we had great advertisers. We had like BMW and Mercedes and Range Rover. And then we went to G4 and it was like Pop-Tarts and like...
Yeah, don't ever forget that G4's biggest cultural contribution was really tightening up the graphics on level 3.
That's right. Like, for Full Sail University or whatever it was.
Knows.
Yeah, that ran a lot on our network. So anyway, there is a new browser. If you do use a browser on your Xbox, it's going to be a lot better. And if you use like a mouse and keyboard... I mean, we've talked about trying to turn Xbox Series consoles into like little mini tower PCs. Like, maybe this is a first step in that direction.
Yeah, I mean, the power's there if you want to do it.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yep. I just for the amount, I feel like the Series X crosses a monetary line where I'd rather spend a little more and get something more versatile.
Yeah, I understand. But look, for people who are like, I can't afford to buy a whole other PC, if they start adding like, if they add like Word and Excel and a couple other things to it, it might actually be a functional kind of little workstation for people. Yep. All right, so we're on to our last topic of GameFace 247. I told you it was going to be a little bit shorter, but not as short as I thought it was going to be. And the last thing we're going to talk about is a game called, and actually this is kind of the game of this month. It's Valheim. I had resisted playing this game. It had a groundswell when it launched into early access, and that's what it's on right now, Steam Early Access. It came out of the gate pretty strong, but then after like the first 5 days that it was on sale, it became like a phenomenon. And Valheim is, and you guys are going to be surprised that I'm even talking about this because I usually do not like this genre. It is a survival game in the vein of Ark, Survival, Evolved. In fact, that's probably the closest analog. But instead of being like kind of a caveman in a jungle environment, you play as a Viking who has just died and is sent to basically purgatory. The game starts and you are flying on the wings of a raven, and this raven just kind of drops you into this land. Well, the first thing you do is you create a character. The character creation in this is not very robust. There's like 10 haircuts, and like it's so zoomed out, you can't even really see the haircuts anyway. So the character creation is very simple. And then the game starts, and you're just being flown in by this raven, and you get dropped down into this wilderness. And then the game just starts. And I have played almost every big survival game. I have given this genre so many chances. Ark Survival Evolved, to me, getting through the first like 30 minutes of that game was torture. I don't know if they've since nerfed it, but literally getting to the point where you made your first tool in Ark was like, I had to use a strategy guide. I'll be honest.
No, that is pretty much how Ark rolls.
Is it still that way?
Pretty much. I mean, it's irritating because there is no reason Ark shouldn't be awesome.
Yes.
It's dinosaurs and cool sci-fi shit. It's and maybe Vin Diesel edition will be different, but Ark is basically almost seems to pride itself on its barrier of entry.
I'm surprised that they have not nerfed the beginning of that game by now, because it was I had to use a guide to get past it so I could play the freaking game. And even then I got past it, and then 5 minutes later I died and had to start all over. Like
maybe the console versions have like more tooltips or something.
Like a baby mode or something. I don't know.
Yeah, I don't know.
But I did stick with it. I kept playing it. Like I ended up getting to the place where I like built my structure and everything and had a nice house and had started hunting dinosaurs. But it just became a grind because you would like die still so easily, or you would be starving so easily, or you would freeze to death so easily. And what this game has done is this is kind of like baby mode survival game. You cannot die from being hungry. It just doesn't happen. What happens is if your hunger meter hits completely to the bottom, it like affects your stamina meter. It makes it harder to fight enemies, but you won't die from not eating. Like you won't die from being cold either. Again, it affects your stamina, which if you do get caught out in the wild and you don't have much stamina and you can't fight an enemy, you could then die from that. But you don't die from the things that you usually die from in survival games that make it so freaking frustrating. So they drop you down in this wilderness. There's a raven there that kind of shows you the ropes. He tells you, like, the basics. He doesn't beat you over the head with what you should be doing and where you should go. He's like, hey, there's this place you should check out, but you better make sure you're ready for it because you're going to summon something that will probably kill you. So you go and you head off in the direction that the raven tells you to go. Along the way, you start discovering, like, that you can grab berries from bushes. You can punch trees and get wood. You can collect stone that's on the ground. And then just out of curiosity, you open the menu and you just see, oh, okay, I can build my first axe from these stones and this wood that I've got so far. Okay, build the axe. Now you build the axe. Now you can chop down trees and you can chop down small trees quickly. And suddenly you're getting wood a lot more quickly. And then you keep going towards the direction that they tell you to go. You get there, which is what's happening in the B-roll right now. And there's a cryptic clue that's like, kill this thing's kin, and you'll basically summon this creature. And you're like, okay, well, I don't know what that means. So you start stumbling around more. And the game slowly builds up your skills without threatening you with death. It's like slowly, and it's not even really telling you what to do. It's just your own curiosity will make you start to wander around. And because there is a plenitude of enemies that are easy to kill, there's a ton of food that you can just collect, and there's lots of resources that you can easily gather, and you just keep opening your menu, and slowly you start to learn on your own what you're supposed to be doing and how you do it. It is the way a survival game should have been built from the beginning. I have no idea why they have made them so difficult and so obtuse all this time. Like, it's so simple. And yet, that is why the game has become so successful. The barrier to entry to this is like zero. Eventually, you stumble upon like a free dwelling. You don't have to build it yourself. So you don't have to like fumble around like collecting a bunch of stuff and then, you know, try to learn how to use the interface while you're worried about like a dinosaur eating your head. Like, there's a shelter there. And if you want, you can take down a couple walls in the shelter that's there and build your own walls. Or you can blow out a whole side of it, take off the roof and build it out and make it bigger immediately. And there's none of this awkward, like, oh my God, I don't know how to do this yet. And they're trying to kill me and I'm dead. And now I have to start all over again. That's not how this game works at all. It is very, very gentle. It allows you to understand and learn how things work before you're required to use those things to keep from dying. And it's such a simple concept. And again, I have no idea why survival games haven't done this before. Now, the game is not particularly good looking. You're checking out the B-roll right now if you're watching on the stream. It does have kind of its own art style. It has a little bit of Minecraft in it. Like, a lot of this stuff is like intentionally pixelated. And I believe, I'm not sure of this, but I believe that like a lot of the trees are constructed in a very simple way intentionally as an art style. A lot of the trees are just like those old school 3D trees where there are just like textures crisscrossed that go up the tree. Mm-hmm. But when you start fiddling around in its world, that's when you start to discover like the depth in the game. Like, for instance, eventually you get to the point where you can chop down trees. That tree falls on top of you, it kills you instantly. But you can start looking at trees in the way that they lean and chop down a tree in a way that not only will it come down so you can get the lumber from it, so it'll come down and take down a bunch of trees with it. And then you can collect all the lumber from all those trees. There's all these little things that are in the game that you slowly discover as you just kind of poke around and try to figure it out on your own. Combat, very simple. There's a block, there's a parry, and there's an attack. And that's pretty much it. Like, even the bow, you use the bow the same way you use the axe. You just squeeze the right trigger button, and you hold it in, and you release it. And that's it. It's a very simple concept to understand. The enemies that they throw at you at the beginning of the game, you can beat them with your fists. You don't even need a weapon. So you're not, like, in fear of dying. And even when you do die in this game, you're not punished all that much. Like, you do lose all your stuff, and you have to make it all the way back to where you died to collect it. But you don't lose anything. You lose like a little bit of your stamina, and like, so it's not like you're completely punishment free. But again, it's a survival game that isn't trying to make you hate it. And that's the way I feel like most survival games are. It's like, I feel like they're constantly trying to make me not want to play them instead of want to play them. And this game is like the exact opposite of that. It's the other part of it too is that it gates things. So I showed you earlier, there's that area with like the little shrine or whatever. And basically what they're asking for there is a sacrifice. And eventually I figured out, okay, they want me to put 2 deer trophies, deer heads basically, on this pedestal, and then it will summon that creature. And that's the boss fight. Now, I probably could have fought that deer boss almost right away, because it's not hard to kill deer. In fact, one other cool thing about this game is that the wind really matters. So if you look in the map in the top right corner, there's that white arrow. That's showing you the way the wind is blowing. And if none of you have ever hunted deer, especially, the key to hunting deer is to make sure that you're downwind from the deer. If you're upwind from the deer, they know you're coming and you'll never even see a deer. And this game uses this. So you need to make sure you're downwind. And if you are, you can creep right up on a deer, because they can't, believe it or not, deer cannot see all that well. You can creep right up on a deer and easily kill 2 deer, and you can take your trophies back, and you can summon that boss right then. Now, I'll tell you this, you're probably going to die, because the boss is not easy to kill, and you do need like a better, more evolved weapon than that to kill the deer, but you could do it. It's kind of like Breath of the Wild in that way, where you can go like straight to the end of the game, like at the beginning of the game, if you want, and you're good enough to actually kill the final boss. So that's cool, but the other part about it is you learned quickly that those bosses are the gatekeepers to the tools that you need to move on to the next part of the world. And those next parts of the world, like they'll be like the first boss that you kill gives you a weapon that allows you to bust up stones. And there are stones blocking the way to this next area that you need to go to. Now you can look into that area and you can see, holy crap, there's some monsters in there that I don't think I'm ready to mess with yet. And so the game, again, teaches you, like, you probably don't want to go in there yet, bro. Like, you want to make sure you build yourself up and build up your weapons and your armor and things like that before you go attack it. But the game also teaches you that when you're ready for that, go fight the boss, get the tool that you need from killing the boss, go bust those rocks up, and you're ready for the next section of the game. It's just a very slow and gentle roll. The enemies, they're not that smart. It's easy to manipulate them. But again, you're not constantly in fear of dying and having like to backtrack like 20 miles. Wherever you put your bed down is where you'll respawn. So it gets strategic after a while as you start making your way through the world. And here's a pro tip I would give you right away is don't go crazy on building your shelter. Because the other part of this game is that there's all these little details. Like wood eventually will rot and decay. So if you build a big house and sort of the bottom part of it is wood, it will eventually start to collapse and decay. When you first start the game, build little shelters that you use to move through the world and put a bed in them. That way when you die, you respawn in that shelter and you won't have to backtrack that far to get to where you died to recollect all your stuff again. But again, the game teaches you. The raven reappears. Like every time you get a new tool, the raven shows up again, and you'll be like, "This is what you should do with this." And it's never like overt, and it doesn't spell out what you're supposed to do. It just gives you hints, but they're enough to tell you what you should be doing and where you should be going. It's really brilliantly designed, and I think that is why it has really resonated with people. And also because it is gentle. It's like, I've wanted to enjoy survival games for a long time. I've never found one that I could enjoy until this one. And I think a lot of people are discovering that with Valheim. The whole Viking theme, like, I don't even really, other than like, you know, the temples that you go to summon stuff and some of the art, like, it's not a Viking game per se. At least what I've played so far, it isn't. Like, I'm not in like a long ship, like sailing to conquer other lands yet. I'm just like trying to creep my way through the wilderness without getting killed and being strategic with how I set up my shelters. And then there's like cooking. You throw down a campfire, and then you put a spit over the campfire. You collect meat. You cook the meat before you eat it. And there is a stamina and an eating meter, but all it really does is just make you better at combat. So for instance, before I went to fight the first deer boss, I made sure that I slept in my bed for a night, and I made sure that I had a full stomach and I was ready to go before I went and fought the boss, because it makes a difference in how much damage you do. It makes a difference in how much like damage you do to the trees when you're trying to chop down the trees. There's just all these little systems that when you first start playing it, you don't even know are there. And then as you start tinkering with stuff, it all starts to become obvious. And then the world is very interesting. The creatures are interesting as you start to learn more about the ecosystem and how it works. Like I said, hunting deer. There are boars in the game that you can tame. Like I didn't even realize that at first. I was just killing all the boars to get the resources from the boars. And then the ravens like, hey, like try sneaking up on one and maybe offering them some of the stuff that you have. And I tried it and I was like, oh my gosh, I just tamed a freaking boar. Like that's how the game works. It is this little world, and they're called biomes. So each one of them is a biome. Like this one that you're seeing right now, this is the first biome in the game. And after you beat the first boss, you're then able to access the second biome. And because they're all self-contained, you start to learn the rules of each biome and the creatures that are in there and the best way to attack them or to tame them. It just becomes this very engrossing world that you get sucked into. And again, I am not a fan of survival games. I have been enjoying this a great deal. And here's another thing that I like about it, Matt, is that this is a game that I've been able to play with my Steam Link out in my living room, because it's not like Twitch gameplay. The enemies aren't like, oh my God, I have like 3 frames that I need to roll before I can avoid this enemy and then counterattack. It's not like that at all. Like the AI is like kind of dumb, but the combat is also clunky. Like you don't feel like you have total control. Like when you first get the bow, for instance, it's almost impossible to kill an enemy with it. You have to aim like 5 feet above the animal to actually hit the animal. And then it does so little damage. But if you keep using it, it becomes more powerful. Like if you keep jumping and you can stand in place and just jump, and eventually your jump ability goes up. If you keep using your axe, it becomes better at chopping wood. There's just all these systems under the hood that are working that you don't even realize it for the longest time, and still until you start leveling up. And this game was made by like 5 people. They've sold like 5 million copies of this game, Matt. They've made and it's $20. So they've made like $100 million, well, $70 million after Steam takes its cut. They've made $70 million off of this game, Matt. It is amazing. It's a great story. It's a very interesting game. And if you're like me and you've wanted to try survival games, and maybe you have tried them and you have been turned off over and over and over again, this is your jam. This is the one that's going to do it. Like the shelter you're seeing right now, that was already there. I didn't have to build any of this. It was already sitting there, and it was waiting for me to come in. Now I can alter it. I can take the roof off, which I ended up doing. You can take out the wall so you can expand like the side of it and make it bigger. You don't have to build from scratch. But again, in the early going, don't go crazy with your structures, because you're going to leave them behind and they're not going to be all that durable anyway. But the other thing too is that stuff stays there. So when you go into the next biome, if you come back, all that stuff's still there. Your fire is still there. You may need to throw some wood onto it to keep it going. But the fire and everything that you've built stays there. So it doesn't disappear. I haven't gotten to the point yet where I haven't played it enough to see if I leave and I'm gone for a long time and come back, if it's like overrun, if enemies have like trampled it, like if a big creature has trampled it. Like I haven't got that far into the game yet to know if it goes that far. But the stuff is still
A friend of mine who plays the game says that last night his house was destroyed by a troll while he was asleep.
Really? That's cool.
He got up and he logged in, and the house had been smashed by a troll.
That's cool the first time.
Yeah.
But it's like you build your workbench, and once you have your workbench, that opens up a whole new array of stuff that you can craft. There's a crafting tool that you have that's called a hammer, and you can take that outside of wherever you have the bench, and you can use that to craft stuff wherever you want. Fire works like fire. If you run into it, you'll catch on fire and it can kill you and burn you down. Death is pretty easy at times if you get overwhelmed by enemies, which doesn't happen that often. But if you do, you'll die. If you get caught on fire, you'll die. If you're chopping a tree and the tree falls on you, you'll die. There isn't a lot of health as far as that's concerned. And once you die, the one thing I was pissed off about, and you can see right there, like I died and I went back and reclaimed it. I'm naked. I lost all my armor. And it did take me a long time before I got the right resources that I needed before I could build my armor again. But I've really enjoyed this, Matt. And again, it has been fun to play a game on my TV through Steam Link because I don't need like all those frames or whatever. It's a pretty game. You haven't really seen in the B-roll, but like up in the sky, there's this gigantic tree that's like stretching across the sky. Like, I don't know if eventually you get up there. Like,
that would presumably be Yggdrasil, the world tree.
Probably, yeah.
Because you are in the Norse afterlife, it seems.
Yep, you're in like purgatory. So again, I've wanted to like these kind of games for a long time, and it's just never worked out for me. I've just never managed to find one that I enjoyed playing. I will say this: the building, I haven't done a ton of it. The building does take a little getting used to, and like I was playing this with a controller, and it uses every controller, like every button on the controller, and some modifiers. I would probably recommend playing this on a keyboard and mouse if you can, but you can play it with a controller. It just, you can tell it's made for PC. It'll be interesting to see how many people end up playing it with a controller versus mouse and keyboard, but.
Once it comes to consoles, I'm sure everybody will.
And it's going to. I guarantee it's going to. But I've been having a lot of fun with it. Way more fun than I ever thought that I would. And like I said, it's $20. It's on Steam Early Access right now. And it's really dry. Otherwise, I wouldn't be playing this in the first place. And I'm glad. Like, it's funny how things kind of work out that way sometimes, Matt, where you're kind of forced to check something out because there is nothing else to really play at the time. And you end up stumbling upon something that you really end up liking. And that's Valheim
in that vein, I would also say keep an eye on the game Maquette.
I've been seeing, I mean, there's been a lot of stuff running through Sifted on that. Seems like a polarizing game.
Yeah.
People either really like it or really hate it for some reason. But I think I may check that out for next week's show because there's not a lot of stuff coming out, my brother.
Yeah, what else are you doing?
Yeah, exactly. But I'm glad that worked out this week, that I got to play Valheim, and I'm glad that I got to play it and I got to pass it on to you guys because I think a lot of people are like me and they're sick of these survival games that are just like mean-spirited, and it's almost like they're trying to make you quit playing them. That's how I feel a lot of times playing these games. Not the case with Valheim, and I think that's why it has become a huge hit. I
haven't played it yet. I have had some resistance to it just because of my experience with survival games being unfriendly in that regard, and also because like I just did Assassin's Creed Valhalla. Like, I don't want to dive back into the Norse stuff.
But I'm telling you,
really.
Matt, like, it's not like you, when you're playing it, you don't think that like, oh, I'm a Viking trying to survive. Like, I'm just some dude who's like, who has like leopard skin armor, and I'm just trying to like survive these weird, like the creatures and stuff I don't associate with like Vikings or any of that. So there are elements of it, like the tree in the sky and the runes that are on like some of the stuff in the game. But otherwise, like, it's not like a Viking game per se, I wouldn't say. So I would not let Assassin's Creed Valhalla turn you off from giving this a go, is what I would say. Any questions about it, Matt?
Not really. I mean, I think you covered it pretty well.
Yep.
How long do you foresee yourself playing it? A long time, or
I think I'll probably keep playing it until Monster Hunter Rise comes out. So probably another week and a half. And again, I'm enjoying playing a PC game on my couch through my Steam Link because I don't get to do that very often because I usually like Twitch games, and they don't work through the Steam Link at all. So I've enjoyed that. I've also enjoyed how my new TV recognizes everything, including my Steam Link, and automatically switches the input when I plug my controller into my Steam Link, and it just appears. Like, I love my new TV for a million reasons, but that's another one. So that's Valheim. I'm having a lot of fun with it. I think you guys should give it a go. It's cheap, $20, only on PC right now, only on Steam as well. I don't think you can get it on Epic Game Store yet, although I would imagine it's coming. Kudos to the small team that built this. They deserve every penny that they're getting from this game. It's a great story. To watch 5 guys who busted their asses for a few years just get instantly rich. Like, instantly filthy rich. And I can't wait to see what they do with the money that they've made off of it. Look what they did with just 5 dudes in a garage. Imagine what they're going to do when they have money to actually hire people to offload a lot of the grunt
I bet they'll hire 5 more dudes.
They probably will. Probably 5 of their friends.
Bigger garage.
Yep, and they'll just get a bigger garage. I hope so. Because obviously it worked. It's resulted. And that's the other thing too, Matt. Like, it's not broken. Like, I haven't come across bugs or like, I haven't had any bugs, actually. Not a one. Unless they're like, maybe I wasn't supposed to lose my armor when I died. I don't know. That did seem weird because it was really hard to get my armor back again. That might have been a bug, but like, I haven't fallen through like the world or like the terrain in this is kind of crazy. Like, I haven't just like slipped down a big mountain and like went all the way down to the valley and died or anything like that. Like, it's pretty solid for a game built by 5 dudes. That's this big and this expansive. And I have seen like some screenshots of people who have been playing it since it launched, and I am pretty blown away by the stuff that they're building. And that has like motivated me to keep going too. I'm like, wow, like this rabbit hole goes really deep. So I'm having fun with it, man. I'm going to keep playing it until something else comes along that I have to play or that I want to play more. So there you go. That's Valheim. Let's see if you guys got some stuff in Q&A for us. Usually you guys already have some stuff in when you see, yep, and when you do. Les Deved, thank you for the subs that you're gifting to our viewers. That's awesome, man. And thanks to anybody who subscribed with Twitch Prime that I missed. I appreciate it. Let's see if there's some questions here. Emperor Dread, would you play Valheim with friends? Online play seems to be the big draw of it. That's actually a good point. I'm glad you brought that up. And yes, so that is a big part of it, is that you can... So when I started my own world/server. It's called Sifted Land, all one word. So if you guys want to join, or if you get the game and you want to join, find Sifted Land, search for it, and it's open. You can come and build your own little homestead inside my world. But you can also go and search the servers, and there's just thousands of worlds that you can join. And yes, you can absolutely play with a teammate, with a team. I don't know how many people are allowed on each server in each instance because I haven't really tried it. But it's there, and you're right. A lot of people have said that that's kind of their favorite part. It would be nice to have somebody to share the grunt work with as far as building stuff, because the one thing I would say that I alluded to that I didn't go into enough detail on before is that I think the building can be improved. And I think that especially is where playing on a mouse and keyboard helps a lot. It felt clunky on a controller. It felt like the sticks were like way too sensitive. So I tried to like spin something and it would be like woof and like spin. Like I had to be really touchy with it. And so that's one thing I think they could improve as far as the controls are concerned. And obviously, having somebody else there to help you build stuff, I think would be a huge boon as well. So yeah, I should have brought that up. Thanks for mentioning it. And I hope to play with one of you guys soon, or all of you guys soon, if that's possible. Here's one from Justin Horman. Now that we're in the quote-unquote next gen, what do you think was the best feature added to console gaming last gen? Is there some feature this gen you think is significant already? And thanks for using my emoji. My smiling face from Ashley and Anything. Let's see. I think we talked about this when we did like the end of gen awards a little bit. I think the free-to-play stuff on consoles is a big deal. Having so many free-to-play games on consoles, that was never a thing before. Like, the best you could hope for is like a free beta or alpha or whatever. Now there are legit great free-to-play games on consoles that you could really just play forever. Like Call of Duty Warzone. Just play it forever. You really could. There are some people, that's all they play. It's just Call of Duty Warzone. So I think that's the big shift for me. Not necessarily like a hardware thing or anything like that. I mean, so far, and I know Matt will disagree with this, but I believe so far, like the haptic feedback on the DualSense has been great for single-player stuff. I don't use it in multiplayer, but I think it's really effective, and it surprises me a lot. Like when I first start playing a game and a part of the haptic feedback will just happen, I'll be like, what? At first, I think there's something wrong. I'm like, there's something wrong with my guitar. Oh, there is haptic feedback. I like that. I think it's a pleasant surprise in a lot of games. I think it's been handled pretty well in a lot of games. But again, I only use it for single-player stuff. Even in a driving game, like I would turn it off to be competitive. Now, playing by myself a driving game, I would maybe leave it on. But if I was going to play head-to-head online in a shooter or a driving game, definitely like a fighting game, no way in hell I would leave that stuff on. But otherwise, I really like the haptic feedback. What about you, Matt?
Well, I did just get an alert that GameStop has PS5 bundles, if anybody is in the market for that.
Wait, they just went up now? Because Wario64 said that they are supposed to go up like hours ago or something.
I don't know. I just got the alert on my phone.
My guess is they're gone already. But they're also bundles, and they won't. In GameStop, the thing to remember with them is you can't sell the stuff back to them. Like you can with other places you buy a bundle. They'll take the stuff off if you want and let you just buy the console. GameStop will not let you do that. You're going to have to sell the stuff on eBay or sell it back to GameStop, and you're not going to get all your money back.
Yeah. Although, to be fair, the bundle I ended up having to get from GameStop, I did keep all the stuff that was in the bundle. The only thing that was in the bundle I didn't end up wanting was Destruction All-Stars, which got canceled, so they refunded that.
That's a special case.
Fun. Yeah. That was about as good as that could have worked out. I don't know. Like,
I mean, the one thing that sucks about last gen is that, Sony went to like having to pay to play its games online.
Yeah.
That sucks. That's a crabby part. It followed Xbox's lead there. But
I guess the wide adaptation of kind of the monthly free games for the services was good.
Yeah. They're getting good on PlayStation 5, man.
Yeah, they're stepping up there. I mean, it's funny to think that for a while, like the big complaint with PlayStation Plus was that all the free games sucked.
Not anymore.
Now they definitely listened to that feedback. Yeah, I guess for next gen, it's just like I wanted more power, and that's pretty much what I have. I do actually appreciate the faster loading for the new stuff, which is I didn't think that would be as big a deal to me. And I do like the quick resume stuff. And I didn't really notice that as much until I started playing Outer Worlds again to play that expansion that came out that I hadn't touched yet. Mm-hmm. And for whatever reason, Outer Worlds is not quick resume properly. When you'd go to it'll load it back up on the Xbox Series X, but it will go back to the title screen. Like you have to reload your save. And for whatever reason, that really bugged me. And I was like, I've been spoiled by quick resume. Look at that. It's not a thing I even thought I was going to care about.
Yeah.
But I do use it and like it.
Yep.
So I guess, yeah, I as annoying as the shortage of space is on the PS5, the SSD move, I think has proven so far to be the right one.
I'll say this too, like the loading time, the SSD, pretty amazing. Like I was playing Outriders and zap. Like literally, like I didn't even have time to like pick the controller up. It was already loaded by the time I did that. Like it makes a huge difference. Yeah, that's another feature that's really great for sure. And I thought it was going to be great, but it's even better than I thought it was going to be for sure. Listevhead asks, Matt, what's your impressions of WandaVision?
I think as Marvel Cinematic Universe connective tissue, it did very well. As a story about Wanda Maximoff, I don't think it got there.
Okay.
Like I like all the pieces of it. I like all the individual scenes. I think there's a lot of great character moments with her and Vision and Agnes. I think Elizabeth Olsen should be nominated for an Emmy for that series.
What is that line that everyone is quoting? What is
grieving
if not for love persevering?
What is grief if not love persevering?
What a line. Like I feel like whoever wrote that had that in his or her back pocket for like 14 years and was like, this is where I'm going to use it.
It was funny because like when I watched that episode when they were in that scene's great. Like that's one of the best scenes in the series. And when they were getting to that line, I thought in my head, because I just seen this saying in like a little quote thing, what is grief but love with nowhere to go. And I was like, oh, he's going to say that. And then he said that, but in a better way. He said in a better wording. And then, of course, there's been the backlash to like people, all the film snobs who think that like you're stupid if you thought that line was profound in any way. Which I'm just like, look, man, I can talk Fellini and Cocteau with you all fucking day. I am a film nerd to the degree that like very few can keep up with me. But I also teared up when everybody came to the fucking portals in Endgame. Like you can enjoy both things.
Yeah,
you can like highfalutin, high-end film snobbery shit, and you can love blockbuster action superhero stuff.
Man.
Like they're all movies, and I don't care what Martin Scorsese says. It's all cinema.
Yeah.
So fuck off.
Yeah, I agree.
Stop gatekeeping good movie. Like, what are you even doing?
What's the point?
Anyway,
I hear you.
I don't know. I don't like why you think that like you're cooler or something because you watch black and white movies with subtitles and you refuse to look at the Avengers. Because I don't know, I do both of those things and I like them both.
Yeah, me too.
And I wouldn't want to go without either of them.
I need them both.
So I don't get that.
Neither.
But WandaVision, I did watch it again. I actually did watch because I was curious to see how it hung together after watching the whole series a second time all at once. I will say the second time through, the first time through, I was speculating was Darcy going to do this? The second time through, all the sword stuff felt completely pointless to me. Because I know the sword stuff was going nowhere. The only point of the sword thing is Monica gets powers so she can be in Captain Marvel 2. and all the rest, like I don't know why the Hayward, the bad guy, was doing what he was doing. I don't know what the point of that. I mean, a lot of it was just like setting seeds for future MCU stuff, but in terms of like kind of getting to the character closure, I felt like it didn't quite do it for me. And I feel like Wanda, while she's changed tactics, I don't think she's come to terms with the grief. And so the thing I was most worried about with the Marvel Cinematic Universe TV stuff is I wanted it to matter. I don't want it to be like the old Netflix stuff where it's like a Remora on the back of the MCU, and like nothing that happens in those shows matters because the films will never reference them. Yep. They, for all practical purposes, the Netflix shows and Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D. are not Marvel Cinematic Universe shows. Like, they don't matter. They reference upward, but the films never reference downward. We will never see the six Avengers reunite with Agent Coulson, because to the films, Agent Coulson died in Avengers 1 and never came back. Yep. And so I really hope that they find a way to make it matter that you watched WandaVision and Falcon and Winter Soldier when you move forward and watch the movies, because clearly the movie's going to be seen by a lot more people. But I really hope they don't consider these to be things where it's like, well, we want to make people feel like we're telling a story that matters, but in the end we can't really change a whole lot of stuff, because otherwise people won't know what's going on when they go to see the movies if they didn't have Disney Plus. You have to commit, and I think they are committing to the point that, but a lot of the stuff that you see that matters to the universe as a whole only really would need to be summed up in a line in a movie. It's like, okay, Wanda has a special book now, and the girl who's a little girl in Captain Marvel 1 is now grown up and she has superpowers. Done. Like, that's all that really mattered there. And in the end, like, I really wanted a more, I think a more cohesive story about Wanda as a character, and I feel like it just didn't quite get there. I think all the pieces are there, but they're not more than the sum of their parts when you put them all together. And it's weird because I'm not saying I disliked it. I liked it very much. I just came out of it feeling weirdly unsatisfied. Okay. And not because of my fan theories, not because I thought the mutants were going to show up. I never thought the X-Men were going to get introduced or anything like that. I wanted Wanda to get her story, and I feel like they kind of halfway got there, but like they might have gotten there more if they hadn't wasted so much time with Sword. They might have been better if they just stayed in the delusion and worked their way out of it. I don't know. I'm a structure person when it comes to stuff like that. So I liked it, but I'm kind of looking forward to Falcon Winter Soldier, because I kind of I'm kind of ready for a straightforward Marvel story now. Like, I'm just like, I just expect Sam and Bucky to just punch a lot of stuff and flip around a lot of stuff and throw some shields, and it'll be great. So I'm hoping for that. Okay.
Next from Congrim 1. With the Microsoft and Bethesda deal being finalized, is it in Microsoft's best interest to make its future releases of the acquisition multi-platform, or would they be better off keeping them exclusive to draw support for their platform? I think we've answered this one a couple times before.
Yeah.
I don't think there's the binary answer for this. I think it's a case by case basis on each game, to be perfectly honest with you. Mm-hmm. I think it's in Microsoft's best interest to make Elder Scrolls exclusive.
Yeah. I think you're stupid if you don't make Starfield and Elder Scrolls exclusive to Xbox.
Yep. Like, smaller stuff, things like Deathloop.
I don't think that's driving console sales. Yeah, like most of that stuff's not driving console sales, and probably Doom isn't necessarily. Like, Doom's an edge case.
Maybe a timed exclusive on Doom, stuff like that.
But like,
I mean, probably timed exclusives on everything, to be honest.
Because like, look, no matter how much whining there would be, people would cave and buy an Xbox to play Elder Scrolls.
Oh yeah. Absolutely. And you can't do this for nothing.
You are stupid if you leave that on the table.
Yeah, you can't do this for nothing. You can't just buy Bethesda and not make anything exclusive. That's silly.
And with the longevity that Skyrim had, like, maybe you put Elder Scrolls 6 on PlayStation in like 5 years.
Yeah.
Like, maybe. You keep some DLC stuff for yourself or something.
Yeah, but I think it's a case by case. The big dogs, at the very least, need a big chunk of time.
You didn't pay $4 billion to give your competition a Skyrim. That's not how that works.
Yep.
I know nobody wants it to be that way, but that sometimes that is how it be.
Yep. JM Rain, thank you for all the subs to our viewers. That's awesome. Minority Games, what should Avengers do to turn things around? I think we just spent 20 minutes trying to figure that out, and we came up with nothing.
Did you see Endgame? Because I think time travel is probably the solution there.
I mean, I don't know if there's anything. I mean, yeah, there is. What we came up with is they need to make story DLC for the characters, like legit story DLC. Ditch the open world MMO stuff.
Right, but I would also go a step further and say, like, part of the problem is that what they've built is very limited, and they need to find a way to break future story stuff out of the mold they're stuck in. You know, it needs to be more than just like, okay, they're doing a thing here, go to this map and like follow the target and punch a bunch of guys and get the MacGuffin, and then you're done. Like, you need to find a way to make some of this stuff feel as dynamic as Spider-Man or stuff like that. Like, there needs to be, it needs to feel less like somebody kind of moving the pieces around in an RPG maker and more like a unique experience for each mission you're on. That would be what I'd focus on in terms of making new story content for Avengers.
Here's from Erebus Jones. Do you think Marvel's Avengers would have had more staying power if the loot game had a meaningful and varied impact on the visual appearance of your heroes, like other games of this type? Well, that's interesting because one of the things that they're doing is they're removing like cosmetic drops from the game. Like,
I mean, you can still get cosmetic stuff by spending currency on
that you earn
stuff
in game too. I mean, they're not like trying to be scummy with that stuff.
Yeah.
And all the stuff you can get from things you earn from playing the game, which is good. But the drops, like, they've removed all the cosmetics from drops. So
yeah, well, some of the cosmetics could only be gotten through drops, which was annoying because you're completely at the mercy of RNG. Yeah, the patterns were that way.
Yeah.
And that was annoying because it's like, well, certain things you want, you're only going to be able to get them through complete luck. At least this way, you're getting to choose how to spend currency that you consistently build up, and they can then put towards what you want.
Yep.
Like it's in the end, it's a little more of a player choice bonus than taking something away. I don't know. Like, you're kind of torn there because it's like, on one hand, yeah, it's nice when loot you get in those games reflects on your character, but then, like, do I want to be playing an Iron Man with like 14 mismatched armor pieces on him? Not really. Like,
I mean, does Marvel want you to be able to do that?
Right. Yeah, exactly. There's a character like image problem there too.
Is there a Bible that says you can't do stuff like that? You know,
there could be. Like, I can't think of a Marvel game that let you do that. Really, you can change the general color and switch costumes and stuff, but in terms of just sort of piecing together like a weird patchwork nonsense thing, like, you can't really do that in any of the Marvel games that I can remember.
Nope.
So yeah, that might be part of the license. I don't know I mean, again, that just sort of ties into the fact that you shouldn't have made this kind of game for this license. Like, this was not the right kind of game for Avengers.
I think it's been proven at this point it's not working. That's for sure. Yeah. Let's see. One last question. Here's one from Vincent. Who do you think wins the fight of Left 4 Dead likes this summer? Aliens Fireteam or Back 4 Blood?
I'm going to say Back 4 Blood.
That's a tough one. That's a good question, Vincent, because I think Back 4 Blood will probably be the better game because it's made by the Left 4 Dead guys. But Aliens has the IP that I think could go... And look, Left 4 Dead... The fans of Left 4 Dead know that this team is making this game, so they're gonna have a built-in audience. Both are gonna do well, I guess, is what I would say, because I think Aliens, the IP, it looks like it's at least passable. Plus, with the IP, I think it'll do okay. Back 4 Blood's gonna do well because the Left 4 Dead people have been following it for forever and have been waiting for it forever. So I think it's gonna be close, to be honest.
I think Back 4 Blood is going to be substantially more successful.
Really?
Yes.
I mean, I was surprised how well World War Z did. So who knows? These games are popular. People really like them. And if stuff gets on Game Pass, it always gets like another life and stuff like that. So I don't know. I think they're both going to do well. I wouldn't be surprised if both of them.
I think they'll both do well, but I think Back 4 Blood is going to do much, much better. Okay. I think Back 4 Blood is going to be a bit of a phenomenon, in part because I don't think it has a lot of competition at that time of year.
There's not much competition at all right now.
At all, yeah. But
it's really tough.
But I wouldn't be surprised if like Back 4 Blood was like the game of the summer kind of thing.
Yeah. Get Up Kid, thank you for Twitch Prime. Anybody else drop their Twitch Prime here at the end I can thank? Get Up Kid 1284 to get it all right. Nope. Nobody else waited toward the end. And if you guys did and I missed it, I apologize. You guys know I appreciate it. I always do. So that does it for GameFace 247 on Sifted Games at Sifted.net. If you're listening to this show out on the internet anywhere, we're everywhere. We're on Stitcher. We're on iHeartRadio. We're on Google Podcasts, Apple Podcasts, Spotify. We're out there. If you're listening to us on any of those services.
We're in your face. We're past your face. We're 10 feet behind you.
If you're listening to the show on any of those spots and you wanted the show to keep going, you want to keep hearing it, head to patreon.com/sifted. Pledge $4 or more per month, and you get all our stuff on day and date whenever we publish it. You can also help us with Twitch Prime. If you guys are on YouTube watching the show, head on over to Patreon, man. Kick us a couple bucks, even if you're just like, give us $1 or whatever. It all makes a big difference for us, and we really appreciate it. If you want to check out me on Twitter, you can find me at Dinfire. If you want to find Matt, you can find him at mkeil. That's Keil. And if you can't afford to help us and you just want to make sure that you're watching the show whenever it goes up free on YouTube or wherever, you can follow Sifted at Sifted Games. So on behalf of Matt, I'm Shane Satterfield. We'll see you next Tuesday at 1 p.m. Pacific, 4 p.m. Eastern. GameFace is up and out.